but we've got to wait for one more in-person council member. We have one council member, Todd Lowenstein, who is appearing remotely. So for quorum for us, we need 3 in person. So we're waiting for either Councilmember MD or Councilmember Horvath. And there's no worries, no worries. All right, I'd like to call to order from actually not call to order, but it's from closed session. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Here.
Councilmember Horvath?
Here.
Councilmember Obaji?
Here, but I was not at closed session.
Councilmember MD?
Here.
Mayor Brown absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Nierenheim.
Here. And he said he was not here during closed session.
Okay.
That Laura didn't.
Did I misspeak?
She didn't understand. That's right. All right. Do we have any announcements?
Yes, we had 2 additional people that joined us. For item F3, we had Matt McClure, outside legal counsel. And then for item F4, we were also joined by Christine Shin from our city attorney's office.
Perfect.
No reportable action otherwise.
No reportable action. Okay. Where are we here? All right, so we are going to adjourn to regular meeting. And can I get a call to order and a roll call vote for in-session, in-person meeting?
Great. Councilmember Lowenstein?
Here.
Councilmember Horvath?
Here.
Councilmember Obaji?
Here.
Councilmember MD?
Here.
Mayor Brand absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Nierenheim.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to do a salute the flag, and afterwards we're going to give a moment of silence, please. All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. All right, we don't have any presentations or proclamations this week like we did last week, but we'll do announcements for each individual council district. We will start in Council District 2, Mr. Lowenstein, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Just an announcement, District 2 community meeting for August will be held next Wednesday, August the 24th on Zoom, 6 to 7:30. Open mic night, no particular theme to it, but bring your comments and your questions. And it's good to join you this evening, so thank you.
All right, Councilmember Horvath.
I don't have anything tonight.
Councilmember Obaji.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We had the Metro Open House this last week at Adams Middle School, which I appreciate a lot of residents coming out from, even those who live on the west side of the city, not near the right-of-way. I had the opportunity there to speak with Mayor of Longdale, yes, Robert Pullen Miles. And I got to understand and convey to him the importance for us to get the Metro to go down Hawthorne Boulevard. And he expressed to me his only concern with that was that the Metro would need to take some of Westwood Builders' land, which would shut them out of business, and they're a top 5 generator for their city. So I promised him that we'd work with him to apply pressure on Metro to either compensate Longdale for that taking if that does occur, but I'd really like to get his subscription to the Hawthorne Boulevard path, although others have said that it does not need to take out Westwood Builders. In addition, at the ICA conference, Mayor Pro Tem Nierenheim became president of the Independent Cities Association. I want to congratulate him on that. He did a great job leading a great conference with a lot of educational material in it. And there I got to talk extensively with Torrance Councilmember Mike Griffiths, again, imploring him, please join us in getting this metro to go down Hawthorne Boulevard. So I intend to go appear at the Torrance City Council meetings when we do not have one here, or else miss part of our meetings, to implore them, because they really want to see the metro come into existence promptly. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is if we all align down the same alternative, the same route, which is down Hawthorne Boulevard. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember MD.
Councilman Horvath and I were at the groundbreaking for the Friendship Campus, which is on Inglewood Avenue. It is going to be phenomenal. And this this program is going to fill a gap for the special needs people in all of our communities, in which they have really great education opportunities up until they're 18 or senior in high school. But after that, the programs are limited. And so it's going to be a vocational school with shop class and cooking, it's not more than cooking, but it's, to be able to be a sous chef, and a lot of programs like that for 18 to 25-year-olds in our community. And it's going to be an exciting addition to that area. Also, September 10th, those of you that have young ones in around under 8, under 9 years old, the Redondo Beach Kiwanis is having a community fair. It's free for the kids to come and play games and crafts, and there'll be some lunches, small lunches for sale. But it's really a fun time. There will be music this year, live music, and the police and the fire department are all going to come and make an appearance as well. So highly recommend you come on out. September 10th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Anderson Park.
Very nice. Thank you. I actually got a bunch of stuff here. First thing I want to get to, as regular council member for District 1, I did not have a community meeting this Saturday like I normally do, because as Councilmember Obaji talked about, we were at ICA, get to that in a second. So I will be doing, since I do an online and in-person one next week, Monday, I have one scheduled for Monday the 22nd, I believe at 6:30. Email me. The email's already gone out. You can check my Facebook page. Registration is open for it. Just a Zoom link that you get once you register. A lot of topics on there. We got to catch up from some things. And to that, ICA, I went this last weekend to a conference called Independent Cities Association, of which Redondo Beach is a founding member, I believe. And it's basically a collection of cities, elected officials who've come together, form an organization to do education and networking. And one of the speakers that we had for the event was a gentleman, an author named Sam Quinones. And he talked about living in Mexico for 10 years and coming back here and looking at the fentanyl epidemic. And his line of the event, of his speaker topic and his 2 books that he has, is there's no such thing as a fentanyl user who is long-term or lifelong. They start it, they get hooked on it, and they end. That's the way it works. And so it was a very informative conversation. As an author, very honest. We also had our interim fire chief, Keith Kaufman, down there as one of our speakers. And I'll just tell you that electeds from the entire LA County region were absolutely amazed at his depth of knowledge, being from police chief to fire chief, the questions he asked. And he got about 3 or 4 job offers right down there on the spot. So thank you very much, Chief Kaufman, for coming down. We're lucky to have you down there and spend some of your personal time down there. The last thing I want to say, 2 last things, is we have, speaking of membership and doing some things, I see there's a lot of people here today. We have this board called the Suspension Board of Appeals Uniform Code, and there are some specific spots there, for instance, an architect, an engineer, and a licensed contractor that we need. So if you are any one of those, live in the city and a registered voter, please apply and let us know. We are actively seeking recruits for that. And to that effect, the last thing I'll talk about is strategic plan is coming up on Tuesday, August 30th. from 6 to 8-ish. And then the follow-up would be Thursday, September 1st, 6 to 8-ish. So that's our strategic plan. We guide out what we want staff to work on for the next 6 months to a year. And you'll see in the update tonight under the consent calendar items, the things that we've been able to check off. So thank you for that. So we will get going from here. All right, we do not have any, can I get approval to approve the agenda unless
Motion to
someone
approve
wants
the
to
order.
move something around? What'd you say?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There I'll give it to
Okay.
Todd.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Cool. And so we have no agency recesses. So blue folder items. Do we have any? I know we have at least 2 blue folder items that we need to admit to the record. Anything else?
Yeah, we have, or for J1, for non-agenda items, we have public communications forwarded by Councilmember Horvath, and then N2, which is related to city living streets policy. We have public communication, and also P1 will be pulled and brought back on 9/6, which is the appointments for boards and commission.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. I actually would have pulled, that's fine. All right, so this brings us to consent calendar. And we're gonna approve all of these 15 items on the consent calendar as is. And if someone wants to put in a card and talk about one of the consent calendar items, they can. If any one of the council members wants to pull any of the items, we can. And I will ask with Councilmember Lowenstein, do you want to pull anything?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath, would you like to pull anything?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Obaji, would you like to pull anything?
No, but I'd like to comment that I appreciate seeing H11, which is for grant writing consulting services or services, and that's really been an emphasis of ours. I'm happy to see that going forward. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And Councilmember MD, are you going to pull anything?
No, thank you.
And I will just make a comment on item H11. Same thing, very excited. That's $75,000 for hiring grant writing firm that hopefully will find us grants, federal, state, county, private, for very specific items. And I'll just say that, check out item H12. Thank you guys very much for your work on everything that we're checking off and getting done. So are there any cards for the H?
No cards for the H's, and if anybody would like to speak on from Zoom, they can raise their hand. Okay, I have none.
Motion to approve consent.
I don't know if anybody in the audience would like to speak on this.
Yeah, anyone from the audience that want to speak in person, other than if you didn't have a card? Okay, everyone's quiet. Moving along, I say there's a motion
Second.
and a second, all right. All in favor of approving all the consent calendar items?
Aye.
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 Perfect. Items passed unanimously. Are there anything we need to read?
Yes. H10, adopt by title only ordinance number 3236-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adopting an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapter 2, zoning and land use pertaining to the procedures for administrative design review. H14, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2208-063, a resolution of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, amending the official book of classifications to include a new position of GIS analyst. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so this is where I think we're on a record for a while.
Keep it going.
I don't think we're in a little roadblock here. This brings us to public participation on non-agenda items. So a couple of ground rules, so everyone knows this is a professional meeting. Profanity will not be allowed and disruption will not be allowed. We have 30 minutes. It's now 6:15. We'll just say it's 6:16. I'll write jot that down. And we are very stringent on this. I do, just so everyone knows, I do the cards first, then I do anyone that doesn't have a card. Then we will go to Zoom first, and then e-comments, then we'll come back around to in-person comments so everyone else wants to do it. At any point in time, once we hit 30 minutes, we're gonna stop and move forward. So we do have a meeting to get to tonight. So with that said, Ron Morocco, item J1, and then after that, Mr. Shea, Ryan? I can't read that, sorry.
Morning, good afternoon, Council.
Oops, wait a minute.
Clerk. My name is Ron Morocco. I'm a historical commissioner, and I'm here for two purposes. The first is to tell you all that we have our museum open this Saturday from 1:30 to 3:30, and we would encourage everybody to come down and see our museum. Our second thing that we're doing is we're trying to also develop a strategic plan for the museum. We have a number of areas that we're looking at: the physical plan, the curation of exhibits, the acquisitions, events, speakers and special events, budgeting, fundraising, marketing, and staff. And why I'm here today is I want to encourage you all to think of a way that we can maintain our October 19th meeting, because we're not going to be able to use the chamber because the city staff's going to be involved with it. So we're trying to think of ways outside of the box, looking at the October calendar. There really isn't any really available dates open. There's Fridays and Saturdays. I'm not sure if staff wants to show up for that. So we are hoping that perhaps we can come up with some alternatives, such as meeting in the library, which allows the public to go there, having our own recording device, or hook into the Wi-Fi so we can Zoom it so people can participate in the public. But I would like an opportunity to at least explore with you all, with the city manager, the city attorney, to see if there is some way that we can actually keep our October 9th meeting so we can keep the momentum on the strategic plan going. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. And just as a reminder for everyone, you get 3 minutes, and we cannot respond to anything that's being said. We can maybe seek a question of clarification, but that is it. Mr. Shea, after that, you got Vladimir.
Good evening, Ryan Shea at 434 North Maria. Been a homeowner for about 8.5 years on Maria. I'm right, in the Barrel Heights area, right by the high school. I'm here just to kind of express frustration. I'm hoping by raising awareness to this, we could find a solution. The parking situation is becoming very difficult for some very specific reasons. Number one, more and more high schoolers are parking around farther and farther from the high school, and it's almost impossible to park there on street sweeping days. We need to figure something out. The street I live on, along with many others, has no driveways. We are 100% alley loaded. Our garages are separate structures. The old, most of them are just one-car garages. So we don't have the option of parking our driveways. It's become a real problem. And to make matters worse, out of nowhere, for the first time in the 8.5 years that I've been a homeowner there, I got a ticket from the police when I was on vacation, parked in the alley. Never has ever happened. It never happened to any of my neighbors. We've all been parking back there. No one's complained. And I got them on back-to-back days because I wasn't in town, so I couldn't even move the car. So I got 2 tickets in 2 days, which is extremely frustrating. There was no courtesy notice given that they were all of a sudden going to start enforcing this. It's frustrating, like I said, because of the problem with the high schoolers. Although the high school's not in session right now, it's going to be a big problem again in the fall. Number 2, I drive an electric car. Our only option to charge an electric car is in the alley. We don't have any driveways. And I think California's promoting EVs. We have to charge our cars in the alleys. There's no option. And most people, let's be honest, use their garage for storage. And none of them, almost nobody has 2-car garages. And secondly, about 4 or 5 feet of width past the fence line is private property. So about half the distance that I'm parking is my own property. Granted, some of it is city property, but I don't know what to do here. I don't know what resolution can come. It's probably an issue for the police department or community resources, but this is just extremely frustrating. And I'm hoping that there could be some lenience here for parking when it's difficult on the street. We're trying to charge our cars. And like I said, I'm hugging the car as close to my fence line as possible, and half of it beyond the fence line is my property. On both sides of the alley, that's the case. I have an Alta survey that shows it. So hoping that, I've talked to my Councilman Lowenstein about the issue. I'm hoping by raising more awareness of this, something could be worked out. I understand you can't respond right now, but it's something I'm very frustrated with. I'm hoping we can come up with something. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Vladimir and then Andrew Mills.
Good evening, everyone that's in attendance. Vladimir Babozic, 620 Nob Hill Avenue. I wasn't sure of the structure of the meeting. I didn't know that we weren't allowed to have an opportunity to pose questions and get automatic responses. So I'm here basically to voice my frustration with the city council's agreement to move forward with the Project Home Key site. Many others that I'm in contact with feel the exact same way that I do. And it's come to light now, even though we've been told that the city had no other option but to go along with, to resort to some sort of control with what would be happening on site. It seems to me, as information comes to light, with the city being awarded $500,000 to continue on with the homeless court, $1.7 million of homeless grants, it's come clear to many of us that it seems like the city is more complicit in what has happened here in the city of Redondo, allowing this to happen, and seems to even have invited this to happen. So as one of the many concerned residents as I speak, it's hard for me to imagine, having watched the November 9th council meeting where it was believed to have been brought up for the first time in front of the council, that everybody seemed to go along with it. And we're finding ourselves here now fighting to resist having this happen for a multitude of reasons, it being an ill fit for the community. Even if it goes really bad, it's going to get even worse, because even if we help 20 of these strangers, the damage that can be possibly done to the surrounding communities is not worth. It's the cost-benefit analysis that I don't think anybody that's involved in this project had the forethought of doing. And I would just like to know, I don't know if somebody could come back to me, where the public record is of the previous homeless court proceedings. How can somebody gain access to that so we can actually see what's happened so far, so we know why the money's been awarded and where the money may be spent? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Susan, and then Mary Drummer. Actually, Andrew Mills. And then Susan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Mills. I live on Broadway, and I'm here, wanted to make notice of what's going on with the homeless situation here overall. Not necessarily to echo what Vlad said, but I have the same concerns. And the more people I speak with, it sounds like there's more of folks like me and Vladimir out there. A lot of it is due to safety, right? And I look at your guys' oaths as here to the safety of the people of Redondo Beach. You know, for me, it's my kid, not necessarily worried about myself. My neighbors, right? Knowing that my neighbor has been chased twice into her house by a homeless person. It's recorded, it's the police, you know, they have reports on it. The homeless court, I guess, is what I'm interested in learning more about, and maybe these are some agenda items we could have for future council meetings, whether it's next month or the month after. But ultimately, to have a separate court for the homeless, and maybe this is just me needing to be educated on it, if there's not a big issue with having homeless people here and raising our hand to house them, you know, why are we having a court? And if there's a court specifically for homeless, is there that many cases, right? Again, inviting crime and other behaviors in here. So I'd like to bring that to the attention of the people of Redondo Beach, for those that don't know what's going on. And just the award of $1.7 million that LA County had gotten, that was for 65 people. That's to take 65 people off the street to put in a housing. So that's 26,000 and change per person. And these rooms are 400,000 per unit. So the math, you know, I'm not Albert Einstein here, mate, but it doesn't add up to me. So that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, can we get the audio fixed somehow? There's a squeaky noise that keeps coming in. Maybe just turn down that microphone.
Or 8.
No, it's not your way. It's not your way.
All right, Susan Brilliant. After that, Mary Drummer.
Hello, dear City Council members. My name is Susan Brilliant, and I'm a resident of Redondo Beach, District 5.
Yeah, it's not you.
Yeah.
I'm asking for your support of the Beach Cities Health District Healthy Living Campus project in our community. I've been working as a volunteer supporting the agency as it reimagines its former hospital site to better reflect its mission and to meet the current and future health needs of the neighborhoods. I'm particularly excited about the Healthy Living Campus plans to serve older adults in Los Angeles County. As a recent gerontology master's graduate of California State Long Beach, I understand programs for older adults and caregiving services will be critical as this population is projected to grow significantly in the years ahead. Specifically, the district plans to create a program for all-inclusive care for elderly, PACE. And that'll be unique in our community. And that will enable older adults to live longer in their homes and also add 217 units of residential care for the elderly. These new features will align perfectly with the district's current in-home services and care management that it already provides. Social work teams help older residents maintain independence, stay physically active, and thrive. Their services are in high demand. The campus plan will also include green and indoor space for programs promoting physical activity and well-being. The Beach Cities Health District has provided preventive health programs such as free fitness and Blue Zone's nutrition education that I've enjoyed as a participant and also as a volunteer over many years. These key services help make it easy for residents to make healthy living choices. So support of this project would be very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mary Drummer. And then after that, first come, first serve.
This is 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Is that okay? Mary Drummer, District 1. They say that all politics is local, but it can have a national model. To quote Gary Kasparov, the point of lies and propaganda is not to convince you of the truth of those lies, but to attack your critical sensibility. It's an attack on truth itself to get you to the point where you no longer know what's true or necessarily care about the truth. We thought venerated institutions would be respected, but there are factions locally and nationally that working overtime using that script against them, like the Building Project of Beach Cities Health District. I am here to reach out to other residents of Redondo to be aware of the tactics being used to influence you by the opposition, which are overwhelmingly false. The likelihood of an effective letter writing campaign to LAFCO, which oversees special districts, to dissolve Beach CHD is nil for an agency that was just awarded the 2021 District of the Year by the Association of California Healthcare Districts. The facility in actuality will house a couple of hundred people, but broadcast it will house more than all the population of Beryl Heights combined. And if you didn't know that area, that estimate is over 6,000 people and includes Torrance. You might believe it, or worse, not care. The expenditures are quickly outweighing the revenue generated by leasing out space in this decaying building. The funds generated support the programs that benefit all of Beach City residents across the lifespan with measurable, significant results in health, both physical and mental. In 2021, BCHD volunteers, 921 of them, during a pandemic, worked over 25,000 hours, the equivalent of over $918,000 of service to Beach City's residents, and are back at it this year leading free weekly Zumba classes on local beaches, overseeing the vegetable gardens at every Redondo Beach elementary school, part of the Live Well Kids program that decreased the child obesity levels here by 68%, running errands for the elderly and disabled like groceries and prescription, which help them stay in their homes, and All Cove, the youth wellness center for young people ages 12 to 25, 18% of Beach City's 11th graders reported seriously considering attempted suicide in the last 12 months. And the opposition's position is to publicly state that it would be sad for the teenagers, but this district needs to be dissolved, full stop. It's not a popularity contest. They simply have no legal ground to bar this project, and the false campaign against it will fail. Please join me in supporting this project. Beach City's Health District is more than a building. It's all of us. Thank you.
Could you give me that percentage again? Yeah, okay. A percentage of the. 18, thank you.
Everybody just got a flyer.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to come down and speak in person?
Thank you.
Come on down. Yeah. Line up.
Hi, my name is Michelin Scarlatelli. I live at 849 Avenue C. I just recently learned about the home key. In 2014, my parents were brutally murdered by a homeless man. I am very uncomfortable with this idea. I'm very uncomfortable that as a community, we did not vote. We should be able to vote on these items. It shouldn't be up to you. It shouldn't be up to you. It should be up to us. We are the community. I am livid that three streets over, I'm going to be and I used to go to Pilates right there, that there's going to be homeless people just running all over the neighborhood. And I'm sorry, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, it's dangerous to hand out crack pipes. It's dangerous to have all these homeless around. And I am afraid for my children and myself. And I think we need to have a bigger conversation about this before it goes. And I think it's a big money laundering situation, personally. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else that wants to come up and speak?
Good evening. My name is Wendy. I live on Avenue G. I work at the Pilates studio right next to that where you guys want to open up that shelter. I'm not in support of it. My personal experience with homelessness is I had a homeless guy attack me once. So I'm a little nervous about having that right next to my work. My question would be, and I know you guys can't answer this, finding this out now, is there's different tiers of homelessness. Like if this is a single mother with 3 kids and she just needs a place to go for a little bit to get on her feet, I'm more open to something like that. If the grounds are being secured with, I don't know, is there anyone going to be checking them for drugs and contraband and making sure, is there going to be a curfew? And what happens if they decide to loiter right next to my Pilates studio? It's bad for business. I've already had some of my senior ladies say they won't come back if that's the case. And my studio owners who are not here, they're like, well, we'll probably just move. But that doesn't fix the problem. That's not, those people will end up, whether it is they want to leave the shelter and walk around, they're going to be loitering. And that's where the problems come. Unless they're not on drugs and they're already on that way to recovery, I just don't see this as being a very safe option for the residents in that area. So please consider that. We really want to slow this down, or maybe, yeah, who's going to be accountable for these people? Yeah, we need to, I didn't sign off on this. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, anyone else would like to speak? Come on down.
Beth Mino, I'm at Catalina and Knob, District 1, and I agree with everybody else who's speaking here. I don't know that this was well thought out. I don't know that we should pay $400,000 on a hotel that was already renovated. I mean, the math doesn't really work. I also am concerned about the long-term spending on this. I mean, clearly we need to do something about homeless people. I'm all in favor of that. I don't like having them on the beach. I don't like having them attacking people. I mean, nobody does, but 20 people, we're spending $400,000 a unit at PCH, 3 blocks, 4 blocks from the beach. I don't know if that makes sense. And that we weren't involved, I'll echo that, same thing. We weren't involved. We get to vote on everything else in the city, but yet we weren't involved in this. And so I object to not knowing the plan, and I object to not being involved in the decision-making in this.
Okay. Anyone else wants to come on and speak in person? All right, do we have any Zoom comments?
Okay, at this time, I don't see anybody with their hands raised.
If you've spoken once already, you can't speak again, sorry.
Oh, here we go. Candace Nafisi. Go ahead, Candace.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Pro Tem, Candace Nafisi, District 3. I just wanted to send a message, a warm thank you to Councilmember Obaji, Councilmember Lowenstein, and Councilman Horvath for taking the time to attend the Metro open house last week. We appreciate the time that you took to meet with residents and learn more about the impacts. We really believe that having our leadership present during these really big conversations makes a really big impact. And for anyone else that wants to learn more about what's happening in the Metro and Redondo Beach, you can check out our Facebook page, which is the No Green Line on Harbor Row. I also wanted to see if we could get some extra enforcement around this area of Paulina, Maria and Irina when school starts. There's a number of no turn signs and traffic tends to be pretty challenging along Barrel when school starts. There's also construction going on in the area. And so it's going to be really challenging once school starts tomorrow. So it would be helpful if we had maybe an extra car or two, or even maybe an extra crossing guard, just be out there to help deal with traffic on the first few days of school once we get started. Thanks for all you're doing. We appreciate it. Candace Nafisi.
Okay, so the next thing is the e-comments. I have my Chief Deputy, Vicki Kornberger, who's going to read the e-comments. Go ahead, Vicki.
Thank you, Eleanor. The first comment is submitted by Vicki Etzel regarding the three City of Redondo Beach City Council members, Narenheim, Lowenstein, Obaji, and Mayor Brand, who have been very devious. You are all committed, all committed a violation of the Brown Act on July 19, 2022. And you have said it's not the first time and it's all right. You are right that it's not the first time, it's not all right. Zane Obaji Jr. was unethical by voting for his own recall election date and anything to do with the Cannabis Initiative. On July 12, Obaji recused himself from any discussion or voting on the Cannabis Initiative, and he has said he was conflicted. But on July 19, he drove all the way up from San Diego during the first 2 hours of the meeting to vote on that very subject, because for some reason he wanted his recall election to not be on the November 8th general election ballot, which would have cost the city only $38,000. It was unethical to vote for his own recall election, and now the city is wasting from $217,000 up to $297,000 on a special election. They are wasting our shrinking reserves. I hope the citizens of Redondo Beach understand how corrupt and power hungry these four people are. Vote yes to recall Obaji, and I hope that the other three are punished for their collusions and violations. The citizens of Redondo Beach deserve better than these greedy, deceitful, scheming, egotistical men. July 19, 2022, the city council meeting was another non-agendized motion to skip Laura MD as mayor pro tem. I know it doesn't do any good to insist that this wrong be righted, because all public outcry to do so has been ignored by these four. I wanted on record again that Narenheim should make Laura MD mayor pro tem. Again, Brand and his posse were in violation of the Brown Act. The citizens should know they are power grabbing and do not care about their city. They only care about themselves. Again, Obaji last week just couldn't be civil. He's crying because he wants the city council to be civil, but he's the first offender. The city attorney even had to shame you from continuing to offend one of your city council members. I understand you can't help yourself, but no one feels sorry for you. Submitted by Miriam Butler. As an 18-year resident of Redondo Beach, I'm highly concerned by the recent actions of the mayor and Redondo Beach City Council, namely Lowenstein, Narenheim, and Obaji. They disrespect the residents of North Redondo Beach by bypassing Laura MD for mayor pro tem as retaliation for us residents, speaking out against the unethical behaviors we are observing. The handling of Mr. Obaji's recall and subsequent October 19 election is another example of their abuse of their positions. Mr. Obaji had originally recused himself on July 12 when council was discussing the recall vote due to a conflict of interest, since he himself is being recalled. However, Obaji then violates the FPPC recusal provision on July 19, voting 3-0 in favor of N1 item, creating a conflict of interest. The N1 item was a non-agenda item to have a special election on October 19, which will cost us, the taxpayers, $290,000 instead of waiting for it to be put on the November 8th ballot that would cost us only $36,000. This is wasteful and abuse of our financial resources. You forgot that this is our money, not yours. You are wasting. The October 19th, the October 19 election will cause harm to the residents of District 4 as it creates voter confusion. It is obvious to those of us paying attention that the intention is to try and keep Obagi on council, despite the resounding desire of the Redondo Beach District 4 residents to recall him. Mr. Obagi does not represent our best interest, as demonstrated by his continuing to vote to put the majority of the state mandated housing in North Redondo and most in the most dense district, District 4, voting to bypass Laura MD as Mayor Pro Tem and consistently voting for the best interests of South Redondo at the detriment of North Redondo. Actually submitted by Maggie Healy under her account, but I understand it is from Mr. Patrick Healy. The comment reads, it has been 56 days since the City Council stole the Mayor Pro Tem position away from North Redondo Beach. City Council's action taken back on June 21, 2022 was not authorized by law. Council's actions were not in accordance with accepted standards or rules. City Council's action flew in the face of convention. They were in total defiance of the standards and rules set by decades of precedent. The current presiding officer is considered to be illegitimate because the recognized rotation was not followed. The current presiding officer is considered to be illegitimate because they do not have the support of the people, which would question if the accepted rotation had been followed. On the city website, there was a page called About Redondo, and on that page is the core values of the city of Redondo Beach. In the section under integrity, ethics, and accountability, it states, we demonstrate the moral character to do what is right, thus build trust and transparency while taking ownership for our decisions. In the history of the state of California, there is no comparison to an elected official appointing his or herself to the position of Mayor Pro Tem. It is simply unprecedented and unparalleled. Breaking protocols without values, breaking standards without values, breaking rules without values, breaking practices without values, breaking precedents without values is not good governance. It does not build trust in the community. The City Council was far from being transparent in its decision-making on June 21st, and 56 days later, Redondo residents are still having to call upon the City Council to restore the recognized and legitimate rotation of Mayor Pro Tem because the City Council continues to demonstrate a complete lack of moral character for what is right. I believe that concludes the comments. I'm going to refresh my screen really quick to make sure. That concludes comments under non-agenda items. Thank you.
All right, we're at 6:43. Time for one more in-person speaker. If you want, come on down.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Leslie Campeggi, Redondo Beach, District 2. There were a lot of people who came up here and had no idea about what Project Room Key was and were incensed about the homeless court. And these things have been going on for quite some time. The homeless court was about 2 years ago, from what I understand, or what I remember. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. The Project Room Key isn't 20 strangers who are just plucked off the street and given crack pipes. The Project Room Key is a county-sponsored, state-approved program whereby people from the pallet shelter then graduate to that type of housing. So they've been in one type of housing to be off the streets and then to another type of housing. I'm not saying I advocate for this one way or another, but there is a demonstrated appearance that our residents really don't understand what's going on with these programs. And we need to do a better job in community outreach. We need to do a better job with having public meetings to address these concerns. We also need to do a better job as a public rather than showing up like an incensed, angry mob mentality when Councilmember Narenheim had that one meeting, to actually sit and listen to what the facts are. But again, we are not doing a good enough job as a city for public outreach to ensure that people know meetings are taking place where they can find information. I've been more aware of what's going on in the city since, I retired. A lot of people work and don't have the time. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's to do that Facebook page with a group of people that, for social media on just a shoot the information out, because people in this city are relying on social media for their information. And so we probably need to be a part of that sooner rather than later. There is a law that people don't understand, that if you don't provide for housing, you then cannot get people off the street who are camping on the street. So that's why you're seeing some of these programs, and that's why you're seeing the state fund some of these programs. And again, nobody had a vote on it because it is a federal law. Martin versus Boise, Councilmember MD has mentioned that several times, and the funding came from the county and the state. So let's do a little bit of a better job, please. Thank you.
Okay, so that's 6:46 exactly. We are done with open comment period, and we are now onwards to our normal agenda for the day, which brings us to our 2 public hearings. Today we have a public hearing on I believe it's the coastal ADU state law, and we have another first reading on our cannabis ordinance, item L2. Since these are both public hearings, we'll be doing ex parte, which basically means we were talking, all of us decision makers will be publicly saying who we've been talking to. So we'll do both ex parte for both items. So Councilmember Lowenstein.
On L1, no one. And on L2, Councilmember Narenheim and staff and the public.
All right, Councilmember Horvath.
L1, staff previously, L2, staff, public, and Councilwoman MD.
Councilmember Obaji.
L1, nobody, L2, staff, public.
And Councilmember MD.
Staff, public, and Councilmember Horvath.
And I, on public hearing, I don't have talked to staff. I've talked to 1 or 2 members of the public on this. And then item L2, Councilmember Lowenstein and a bunch of members of the public as well as staff. So that brings us to item L1. Can I get a motion to open up the public hearing?
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Very nice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And let the record reflect, Councilmember Horvath was not available, abstained. Okay, so ADU ordinance in the coastal zone with the coastal commission, rolling the dice. So we getting some good news here.
Yeah, we did.
Got it.
Thank you, clerk. So this item is to introduce our ADU ordinance incorporating the California Coastal Commission
So
modifications.
let me interrupt real quick. Sorry, this is Brandy Forms, Community Development Director. She's in charge of planning and zoning, as well as permitting and construction, all that good stuff.
Great, thank you. So Redondo Beach adopted its accessory dwelling unit or ADU regulations initially in April of 2019. In that fall of 2019, the State Senate and Assembly adopted several bills pertaining to ADUs to change the regulations and make them more permissive. The governor signed those bills into law in October of 2019, and they became effective on January 1st of 2020. Any local regulations in conflict of the new regulations, state regulations, were deemed null and void. On January 10th of 2020, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, provided a summary of those changes along with the final adopted state regulations. And HCD then, it was later in the year in 2020 that they issued the guidelines on that. The city's regulations were very much in conflict with the new, more permissive state regulations. So those April 2019 regulations that the city adopted were considered null and void. So we had to, until we could adopt our own regulations that were in compliance with the new state regulations, we had to comply completely with the state regulations. So in order to implement any local regulations that might have a little bit more restriction than what the state had, the Community Development Department worked with the City Attorney's Office to revise those local regulations. In September 2020, the Planning Commission considered those and recommended the adoption of the revised ordinances. October 6th of 2020, the City Council had initially introduced those ordinances, but then we received HCD revisions and had to reintroduce the ordinance on December 8th of 2020, and then adopted our ADU regulations on January 12th of 2021. Although the inland ordinance became effective 30 days after the adoption, the coastal ordinance requires the Coastal Commission certification before it comes effective. So we had sent that off right away to the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission considered the city's ADU ordinance at their April 6th, 2022 meeting and approved the amendments to the local coastal program with modifications. The proposed modifications to be adopted are provided in the attached in the packet with the Coastal Commission staff report dated March 24th of this year, and the addendum that they provided, that Coastal Commission provided April 4th. So all of the different modifications were incorporated into the ordinance before you this evening. A version of the ordinance with track changes was also available in the packet, just to make it a little bit easier to see where the changes from what we had previously adopted and what the Coastal Commission had changed. The local coastal plan amendments will not be effective for implementation in the city's coastal zone until the City of Redondo Beach adopts the Commission's suggested modification, which we're looking at introducing tonight, and then looking to adopt at the September 20th meeting. And then the City Council needs to forward the adopted modifications to the Commission by resolution. Again, we'd be looking to have that resolution on for the September 20th meeting. Then the Executive Director certifies that the city has complied with the Commission's April 6th action, and then the Commission concurs with the Executive Director's determination. So even though we do need to adopt this, there's still going to be a little more procedure that Coastal Commission is going to verify that we adopted the modifications. Although the state's ADU regulations have limitations for parking requirements regarding ADUs, the state's ADU regulations are not to supersede or in any way alter or lessen the effect of the application of the California Coastal Act. What that means is if the California Coastal Commission determines that there are parts of the state's ADU regulations that would interfere with, for example, the public access to the waterfront, they could require a municipality to impose some regulations. And that's what they did for our ADU ordinance. So what they are requiring is, or allowing, I should say, our city to require one parking space per ADU in a limited area in the coastal zone. So south of Nob Hill, along Esplanade, and on the west side of Catalina, we can require one parking space per ADU. The state's ADU regulations have a waiver where if you're within a half mile of any bus stop, that you can't require a parking space for an ADU. And here, the Coastal Commission is giving us some leeway on the requirement for the ADU. The more significant change that the Coastal Commission has provided in their modifications is that our ordinance will now require an on-site replacement parking when a private garage or carport or covered parking structure is demolished or converted in conjunction with the construction of an ADU. That is not something that the state's ADU law would allow. However, the Coastal Commission recognized that if the different sites were converting parking to create ADUs, that was going to have a significant impact on the parking on the on-street parking in the coastal zone. So they are basically telling us that we need to require that replacement parking when a private covered parking is being converted. These modifications were determined necessary by the Coastal Commission to maintain the effect of the California Coastal Act. So it will supersede the state ADU regulations. And the Coastal Act requires that the city's adoption of the suggested modifications be completed within 6 months of the Commission's April 6th action. So the deadline for the council to adopt the modifications is October 6th of this year. This agenda provides for the public hearing and introduction of the ordinance adopting the Coastal Commission's modifications. If approved for introduction, staff would schedule the ordinance, as I mentioned earlier, for council consideration of adoption on September 20th with that resolution to forward it to the Coastal Commission. And then we would be in compliance with that October 6th timeframe. So here's the recommendation from staff. You've opened the public hearing, taken testimony from staff. You can hear from the public, then close the public hearing, deliberate, and introduce the recommendations to introduce the ordinance by title.
Okay, thank you. Didn't we get this in the springtime? Didn't we get a notification, or that was in the January, February, that's why it went to them in April, you said?
So it went to them, it was sent to them after adoption in 2021, in January 2021. And when they receive it, they have to deem it complete. They have a year to make their determination. And since all the different ADU regulations from every municipality that's in the coastal zone was coming through, they got to ours and were able to schedule that. And we had to provide some documentation on the, in order to require the parking for the ADUs themselves, yeah.
So this is just reconfirmation of the information that they sent to, that we had with them.
So
it's not in its exact same form that we sent to them, correct?
Correct. So
That's why, okay.
so what they did was they reviewed our ordinance and approved it with
Minor modifications. Yep, I remember
modifications.
that.
Well, actually, one is a pretty major one. The requirement for the replacement parking is a really big deal for our coastal area. So with those modifications, if we adopt those, then and they'll verify that we adopted the modifications that they put forward, then we get it certified.
Okay, fantastic. This affects District 1 and 2 tremendously, especially District 1, where 40% of the population-ish is on west of PCH. So on the R1, actually, yeah, R1. If you're in the large buildings, doesn't really affect you, just R1 primarily. So I do not see any speakers who put their hands up. Is there anyone from the public that wants to come down here and speak? Okay.
Motion to close the public
No.
hearing? Oh, sorry.
I don't know if there's Zoom, but I think I see 2 e-comments. I think 3 e-comments, 2 e-comments, 3. Hold on, I think there's 2. All right. Is there any Zoom comments or e-comments?
Okay, for e-comments, the first one comes in from Concerned Citizen. Before the city moves forward with HDL as the third-party scorer, as a concerned citizen, I must report that Ken Spiker of Spiker Rendon.
Wait, that's another item.
I thought we were on L1.
We are.
Yeah, this is ADUs.
The person might have, I'm seeing this now, they might have themselves be a little bit, they got the wrong item. So we should read it next time.
I'm so sorry.
No,
Okay.
It's not your problem, not your fault.
The next comment is from Jill Clausen. Jill Clausen, Redondo Beach resident since 1994, homeowner since 2004. As long as the state is requiring the city of Redondo to allow the building of more ADUs, and given that the state themselves have established requirements for all new residential building to be fitted for electric appliances with no gas lines running to them, I would like to propose that the city of Redondo add our own additional environmental and water saving requirements, including but not limited to incinerating toilets instead of flush toilets, solar panels, rain gutters, and downspouts with rain barrels, on-demand electric water heaters, and disallowing irrigation system installation. The burden on our precious and dwindling natural resources with all the additional building being demanded of us will require such measures if we hope to make it through the increasing drought. Thank you for your consideration. That concludes the comments for L1.
I have is the state's not requiring with no gas lines running to them, and then definitely not requiring the coastal zone.
Not for ADUs. So it may be something that, I know that the state is updating the construction code this year, and we will be bringing that back as another item. So, but it wouldn't be specific to ADUs because the construction would be, they wouldn't put something more restrictive on ADUs than they would on other construction.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? No speaker? Oh, view speakers. Go ahead. What do I know?
One thing is that if you're going to be able to require parking for ADUs, right now we have that rule that we can't have driveways to nowhere. Are we going to have to relook at what will be parking? Because I mean, it might just be a pad, and are we going to have to change that part?
We won't have to change our parking regulations or driveway regulations, but it will be it is very specific in our requirements, and it's the state does require that the city has to allow them to, in any modification or any configuration, to, whether it be tandem, maybe they utilize what was a driveway. They can utilize that for parking, but we were able to require that it has to meet the standard size of a parking space and have the backup ability, just for, safety's sake.
Because the intent of my question is that I don't want it to be prohibitive to build these ADUs because our parking requirement is too prohibitive.
Yeah, no, our parking requirement is, this actually supersedes our parking requirement when it comes to parking, whether it's conversion of the parking or the requirement to provide parking for ADUs. We have to, as a municipality, allow those to be in any configuration. It just has to meet the standard size of a parking space.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public in person? Going once, Zoom, going twice. No?
Motion to close public hearing.
Did
What?
Obashi recuse himself? Or
No,
just-
he just stepped out for a minute.
At 6:41.
Thank you.
So, motion to close public hearings on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so do we have any other motions on the floor for the item? All right, I'll make a motion to adopt staff resolutions and the ordinance as is.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, comments from public? There you go, not the public, sorry. All right, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath. Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Narenheim, aye as well. Motion passed unanimously. What do you have to read for us? Thank you.
Introduction by title only, ordinance number 3242-22, an ordinance of the City Council of Redondo Beach, California, amending Title 10, Chapter 5 of the Municipal Code pertaining to accessory dwelling units in residential zones in the coastal zone consistent with state law and incorporating California Coastal Commission modifications. Thank you.
Okay, that moves us to item L2, which is a second of the first reading. A sequel, part 2. And this is the introduction of the first reading for the cannabis ordinances, amending our, repealing essentially, our retail cannabis in certain zoning. And this is the first of multiple steps moving forward. So we are going to open the public hearing, take public comments, hear from staff for a second or two, and then close public hearing and go from there. So is there is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So, do we get a mini staff report, part two?
Yes,
Or
very brief. We're going to be very brief
Yes.
today, given the fact that we've spoken and talked about this item quite ad nauseum over the last few months. So.
Right, so this item has been on since last October, when you heard the steering committee recommendations. City Council finalized the direction in January. The Planning Commission considered the draft ordinances on March 3rd. On May 10th, the City Council considered the Planning Commission recommendations. And on July 19th, the ordinances were introduced. And it was 3 ordinances, one for amending Title VI, which is the business, professional, and trades. It's the licensing. Title 10, Chapter 2, which was the inland zoning, and then Title 10, Chapter 5, which is the coastal zoning. At the August 2nd meeting, a second reading was on the agenda for the Title 6 and then the Title 10, Chapter 2 inland zoning. And that motion failed as it lacked 3 yes council member votes. So the City Council approved a motion to schedule the ordinances coming back for reconsideration this evening. And that's what you have before you. It did require the reintroduction. The good news is that the Title 10, Chapter 5 had not been voted on, so that will still be considered at the September 6th City Council meeting for adoption. If these are introduced, those would be considered at the same time. Sql exemption, just for clarification's sake, it is considered Sql exempt, the ordinances, and here are the recommended procedures. You've opened the public hearing, taken testimony from staff. You can take the public input, close the public hearing, deliberate, and then the recommendations to introduce by title only the 2 ordinances listed on this page.
And just to follow up on that, one quick reminder, as you all know, this ordinance and the one that will be considered on the 6th were prepared after a many-year effort that began with the city manager working group, input from a number of community stakeholders, the residents, council deliberated on a number of occasions, planning commission, et cetera. We believe this is well crafted and will suit our city procedurally very well into the future, and we strongly recommend the reintroduction and approval of the ordinance and carry over to September 6th for consideration of adoption.
All right, thank you, staff. So I'll just go and say a few words. I think this is a very strong ordinance. I don't believe that, everything is perfect according to my world. We all have to take and give. I fought very hard on a couple of items, didn't get them, but I got a lot of things that I did want. So when you make sausage in government, sometimes it's not easy, but I think this is fantastic that what we've built and put together. It really speaks to what this community has wanted over the multitude of number of years. It's transformed and changed. Is it where I want? No, but it's absolutely where we need to go. It's happening all the way around us. It's giving us opportunity to move forward. And there's some of the outside forces have really, starting last November, as Councilmember MD said, made us as a council unanimous against those outside forces, moving us forward with our own ordinance, having this introduction and moving forward with this ordinance to allow something to happen, which is already happening everywhere around us. It's not like we're allowing something to happen. It's already happening all the way around us. Everyone up here has gone on record multiple times how they're proud of this ordinance. Every single council member has talked about how we've had a dramatic amount of public input about how they have been a part of the process through multiple different levels, planning commission. So I think being the first in the South Bay City to allow retail cannabis says a lot. It's a long process. We're nowhere near to giving out a free ride to anyone, a license to anyone, a location to anyone. This is a first step. It's a big step, but we've got multiple other big steps to take. And that's really important that people understand. And this controls our destiny moving forward. And if you see the things that are happening out there outside of the city coming to us, City of Redondo is a very valuable city in multitude of different ways, and we are protecting ourselves in a multitude of different ways through different strategies. So we are going to take some council comments, we'll go to the public, and then we'll do some more council comments, and we'll go from there. Councilmember MD.
I agree with everything you said. It's we've brought everybody together. It's an ordinance we should be proud of. Will it be perfect? We'll see once we get going down the process. But the advantage of doing our own ordinance versus a initiative is that we will have control to change it and be adaptable when if things do go awry, or if things are successful, we can expand it. So that's a lot of being able to do our own ordinance versus to govern by the ballot box. And so my objection before was simply the timing. I'm okay with this timing. And so I think we could move pretty easy on this.
Is there anyone else on the council that wants to speak? Councilmember Lowenstein?
No, thank you. I think what's been said by both of you is how I feel. City Manager Wodzinski has mentioned all the input we've had from a variety of people, from the schools, from industry experts, from police. And while many people are not excited about cannabis dispensaries, this has been forced upon us. And so I believe that this is the right path for us. It's limited to 2, and it's tightly regulated, and it will hopefully benefit the city financially. So I also believe that I'm going to support this, and looking forward to its passage. So thank you.
All right, is there any members of the public that would like to come down? Oh, we got some cards. Perfect. Just one. Thank you. All right, Mr. Jonathan Savetko. Actually, you can take it right back.
Your microphone's on.
Oh, what happened? There you go.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. To say the least, this has been a journey. And I think I heard a couple chuckles here. Yeah. You know, I'm recounting here tonight, thinking about how many years ago Councilmember MD was the first to make the motion to establish our committee here, followed and seconded very quickly by Councilmember Narenheim. I'm remembering that it's nearly a year to the date that Councilmember MD had first brought to my attention that we had been served an outside initiative. I'm remembering this entire year, how we've all come together to understand thoroughly what was wrong with that outside initiative. I look all around us here and I'm a little surprised and a little disappointed. Councilor Narenheim had brought up one point that I'm sorry to have to correct him on. Hermosa Beach last week passed their ordinance. Their first reading of their ordinance, which means they're likely going to pass their second reading before us, which means all the years of leadership that we took forward, that all the other cities were looking to us to see how to do this, we missed that window.
They copied us.
They did. But we don't get that little gold prize, which is
I have a comment for you on that.
However, I'm encouraged because if tonight goes as I hope it does, it shows a little bit more towards what the future can be. This group has come and they've attacked 8 cities in total, 4 in Orange County, 4 in LA County. The ones in Orange County had been unsuccessful in light of some attention from the FBI, in light of a number of other issues that were going on down there. I'm further encouraged that tonight at El Segundo City Council meeting, it has been announced that they have also pulled their initiative over there. So out of 8 cities that they have served, we only have 3 left in which we have to be concerned about the Outsiders Initiative. I think those are pretty good odds. And I look here and I see that I'm hoping we're going to have yet again a united front, not just here what's in this, but also with the city and with hopefully a lot of other supporters to ensure that we maintain the control that we need to. I think it was well said. The purpose of an ordinance tonight is that this is not perfect. It was never going to be perfect. This is why we keep changing the rules on a state level. This is the best that we can do here right now. And there's a number of things that even I'm looking forward to seeing what we can grow it into. But this is why this is the right decision now. And I just once again want to thank you guys in hopes that tonight's decision goes as it is expected. That we pass it once again and hopefully have it ratified by the 6th. thank you again for all the support.
All right, anyone else in person that would like to comment?
Good evening, members of the council, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the staff. Eugene Solomon, Redondo Beach. Hermosa Beach, in their first reading, did something I think that's really smart. In that they're going to have their second reading, and they will have an ordinance in place so that when it comes up to the ballot, they will be able to tell their people, their residents, we're not saying no to cannabis. You're welcome to have delivery everywhere in the city. We're saying no to this initiative in retail cannabis. And that way, as we could do with our ordinance, we tell people, we're not saying no to retail cannabis. We established a retail cannabis ordinance. We're saying no to this ordinance. We're saying no to writing an ordinance that benefits only a few and not leaves an open road for everybody else. We're saying we are okay with this according to the rules and guidelines established over a number of years. And we tell our residents that, and we tell them to vote no on the initiative, Measure E. What motivates somebody now to support Measure E? What will motivate somebody to take up a cause on behalf of a political hatchet man who has said, this is blood sport obtaining licenses, and I'll do whatever I have to do in order to get them? What is going to motivate somebody to support Measure E and not support our ordinance? Not tell their constituents to vote against Measure E, not tell their constituents to support our ordinance, that our ordinance is the best. The hard work that our staff did, the hard work that all of you did, our city attorney's office, the residents, the steering committee. What's going to motivate somebody to take up arms against that on behalf of somebody like the proponents of this initiative? If you think that supporting that initiative rather than this ordinance is an honorable thing, it's not. And doing the dishonorable thing to what you think is going to lead to an honorable outcome is a delusion. So don't think that, well, I can support these guys because they have the same goals as we do. That maybe I can get power back. Maybe I can get my initiatives going forward, because they'll leave you in the dust. Support what you've done here tonight going forward. Pass this first reading, pass your second reading. Support our ordinance. Support our ordinance in the face of Measure E. And support your constituents and support your city and all the hard work that was done. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public? All right, Zoom comments.
Okay. Anybody would like to speak on Zoom, if you can please raise your hand. I have the first one right now. Is Joan Irvine.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I'm out in the desert. And I just wanted to say, first of all, to all the city council people, please, please, please pass this. Let's move forward with it. I'm out here in the desert, and I was at a Cannabis Trade Association meeting, and from the Desert Hot Springs, the mayor and every single council person came to this meeting. They come to a lot of the meetings because the cannabis industry is such a big part of their economy. In fact, 32% of their tax revenue comes from the cannabis industry. And that's about 50% retail and 50% cultivation and manufacturing. So it is very important to them. I was at the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber of Commerce tonight. There's no issue. Everybody, it's like a no-brainer. It's just part of their business and environment. So there was none of this, oh my God, cannabis. So just know that we do need to move forward. Please, please, please don't use this cannabis as a political hot potato. Just move forward on all the hard work of everybody, of the city council, the city staff, Jonathan, and let's just get this going so we can provide the same type of services to our residents as is being done out in the desert so successfully. Thank you.
Okay, Vicki, are there any e-comments?
Well, we do have the one e-comment under, that was mistakenly labeled under L1. It may be L2. I'm not clear. I can go ahead and read it.
Yes, please go ahead and read it.
Thank you. This is sent from a concerned citizen. Before the city moves forward with HDL as a third-party scorer, as a concerned citizen, I must report that Ken Spiker of Spiker Rendon Consulting bragged while in an intoxicated state that he owned HDL and Mark McPherson. If the purpose of hiring HDL is to get an impartial score, I urge the city council to investigate the relationship between Spiker Rendon Consulting and HDL. There are no other comments under for L2. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else for public comment out there on this? Yeah, come on down. Yeah, just anything you want. You got 3 minutes, as long as it's on this item.
Yeah, it's on this item. Sorry, I did not.
You got 3 minutes.
realize this
It's
was going to
okay.
be here.
That's why we're here for you.
Andrew Mills, question of like where, I guess where these are going to be, the dispensary and all that has been worked out. Like I could find documentation on that and.
So you ask us a bunch of questions,
shoot,
say what you
yeah,
need to
I'm
say,
sorry.
and then we'll answer them. That's the way this kind of,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha.
You only
All
got 3
right,
minutes.
Yeah, it's
Give you a
fine.
few
I don't
extra
have many questions on it. I just want to see if, what the criteria on location is, obviously schools being a concern there. And then I hear the comments around a few items, like the state is doing this, the state is doing that. We're not left with a choice. We seem to raise our hand first a lot of times. Just curious as to why we don't let Manhattan Beach or someone else be first for once. You know, I know we're better, but just on items like homelessness and cannabis. That's it.
All right, I'll respond directly now for you on that one. Yes, the locations, not individual locations, are set, just so everyone knows. We have done what's called kind of general zoning, added uses to certain zoning standards, and then basically said, if you want to have, okay, if you have a school, after school program, things of that nature, not within 1,000 feet of those areas, which basically you just draw a circle around, and we have multiple circles. So that leaves certain commercial zones. So certain commercial zones are excluded, like the coastal commercial zone, CC zone. And when it comes to the state raising our hand first, you know, the comment that was made earlier regarding Hermosa being the first, it's, you know, there's something I've said for a long time with cannabis here in South Bay. And I've said this, and the city attorney comes running in, he doesn't need to, because it's a general fact of you can get cannabis delivered to wherever you're at. And while it's technically speaking illegal, that's the first thing the city attorney would say, it's illegal. It happens all the way around us, everywhere around us. And what we have been shutting down are the retail shops, physical retail shops. And this will now correct that. It's easier for us to deal with that, easier for us to deal with retail. We will be able to collect some at a second, multiple steps down the way. Actually, funding for the things that we do here. Not as ordinance doesn't deal with taxation or fees. It just deals with where the ability of a particular location could be. So yeah, Hermosa, technically speaking, is allowing something that's happening already, but tomato, tomato. And if you didn't realize what could have happened, you know, we didn't have enough votes last time. You need 3 votes to pass something up here in the council. We had multiple council members gone, so it wasn't available to be passed. So that's why we're up here doing all this over again. So if there's no other further comments for anyone to come down or questions, anyone going once, Zoom, going twice, you're welcome. E-comments? Okay. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
I will second that, to close the public hearing. And we will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim. Excuse me, Councilmember Lowenstein, sorry. I'm looking at my thing here.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
I'll abstain.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
and Mayor Pro Tem Narenheim, aye as well. So one abstention, unanimous vote. And is there any other motions on the floor for this ordinance?
To accept staff recommendation and introduce by title only both ordinances.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this particular motion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
I'll abstain.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Narenheim, aye as well. That is another unanimous vote across the board. Thank you. And what do we have to read on these titles? Thank you.
Introduction by title only. Ordinance number 3240-22, an ordinance of the City Council City of Redondo Beach, California, adding Chapter 6 to Title 6 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to regulate commercial cannabis businesses. Introduction by title only. Ordinance number 3241-22, an ordinance of the City Council City of Redondo Beach, California, amending Title 10, Chapter 2, Section 10-2.1626 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to allow commercial cannabis activities in inland zones of the city. Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to the next item, which is item N1, which is Mr. Kapovich, a waterfront economic development regarding the discussion and possible action regarding modifications to the city's electronic sign regulations. So I know I've made this motion multiple times, and it's been a number of years. I think for me, this started off with the Legato conversation with the hotel that they had, and then we had it again with the South Bay Galleria. That was part of that motion again. And then I think most recently, we had a deal with the sign down in the harbor, and now we are back. So as far as I understand, the only people that are allowed to have LED or electronic signs are City of Redondo Beach and the school district.
Correct. Yes,
So-
Greg will take this item. As you know, Mayor Pro Tem, this is a follow-up to one of our strategic plan objectives and relates to also an approved capital project related to improvement of the Redondo Beach Marina sign that was received appropriations last fiscal year. So with that, Greg, why don't you take it away?
Thank you for that kind introduction. Just going right into it. So first, some background. In 2021, City Council appropriated $100,000 for improvements to the existing freestanding sign along Harbor Drive within the waterfront. This was inclusive of adding the electronic messaging board to the sign. However, electronic signs are generally prohibited in Redondo Beach with the exception of allowances for schools and theaters in the city of Redondo Beach, as you said. So at the same time, City Council directed staff to return with a discussion item so the electronic sign could be installed in the waterfront. So we essentially are going to be talking about what we could do to amend the zoning code to allow it within the waterfront tonight. And here is that freestanding sign that would be improved with the new electronic sign if the code is eventually amended. It's located on a site that is zoned Coastal Commercial 3, which is a unique zoning classification that affects property within the waterfront. Staff would propose allowing these signs within the C3 zone subject to certain design standards and a review by the Harbor Commission. So while rare, the city does allow these signs on sites with schools or performance theaters that can accommodate up to 1,000 people, subject to very specific development standards and a review by Planning Commission. Now, these development standards were carefully developed to ensure that any negative effects to surrounding properties are mitigated. You can see those standards listed here. They limit signs to 1 per site. There's a max height of 30 feet, 120 square feet of sign area. They must be an LED form of a light. They can't operate between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. And messaging must be fixed for at least 8 seconds to avoid unnecessary flashing. So understanding that these existing standards were created for a reason and to protect surrounding properties, we're going to use them as a starting point for our discussion tonight so that we can eventually create unique standards for the waterfront. The following standards are proposed and do require council feedback. Now, the existing sign along the waterfront is neither a school or a theater, and Harbor Drive is not classified as a major arterial street. So we've eliminated those first 2 bullet points, and they would not be included. Additionally, requirement number 3 limits the number of electronic sites to 1 per site and further limits specific messaging displayed on the site to be those associated with the school or theater. So in other words, 1 sign is allowed per site and off-site advertising is prohibited. Now, the waterfront's comprised of many properties that collectively share parking and access rights. And staff is concerned that allowing up to one per property could negatively affect to excess signage within the waterfront. The existing Keemharder freestanding sign advertises information across all areas, including International Boardwalk and the pier areas. So for these reasons, staff recommends including a design standard limiting the waterfront to just one electronic display sign. In terms of messaging, staff recommends allowing messaging related to any business or event taking place within the waterfront, as well as Redondo Beach news and events. So staff supports retaining the rest of the standards concerning size, height, type of lighting, flashing, and hours of operation for the CC3 zone. So that takes care of the original direction from council to allow for the electronic sign in the waterfront. But while we're working on the sign ordinance in general, city council may want to consider allowing these signs in other areas of the city, specifically along the 405 freeway and along our commercial corridors as an economic development strategy. So first we'll focus on those properties fronting the 405 freeway. There are only 5 parcels that do front the 405. They consist of Del Amo Motorsports, Ferguson Kitchen and Bath, 2 hotels. It's the Homewood Suites and the Hilton Garden Inn, and a shopping center anchored by Vaughn's. Now the nature of an LED sign can provide increased visibility, which is noteworthy on highways where speeds are greater, and for those businesses with a regional customer base. So both Del Amo and Ferguson do draw customers from the greater LA area and the South Bay areas. And hotels are a form of tourism that draw people into Redondo Beach. And anything that helps increase visibility in a form of tourism can increase our yearly TOT tax increases. Finally, a commercial shopping center where multiple businesses share an electronic sign visible from the freeway could drive in additional traffic and increase sales tax revenue. So given the limited number of parcels that would be available with 5, given that there are regional and polls, that staff is open to the consideration of including these properties, but we'd like council feedback on that matter. And then second, should we allow electronic signs for businesses within our commercial core areas, specifically along Artesia, Torrance, and PCH? To cut to the chase, we don't think you should, but we're open to the discussion. It's along these corridors that you find smaller businesses meant to support the local communities, either dry cleaners, banks, gyms, restaurants. They're really meant to serve local residents utilizing various forms of transportation. As an example, the ACAP wants to change Artesia from a vehicle-heavy pass-through street to something that better responds to pedestrians and bicyclists. And pedestrians and bicyclists respond to blade signs and A-frame signs, not necessarily LED bright signs. In addition, the speed along these commercial corridors are significantly less than, say, a freeway. So the increased visibility isn't much needed there. And then finally, just the sheer number of businesses along these corridors, we could get, what we could consider sign blight. So we don't think you should pursue this, but obviously open to the discussion. So that does conclude my presentation. I have listed here staff's recommendations just to kind of help guide your discussion tonight, but I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
And if I could add just a couple of fine points to that. Thank you, Greg, for sifting through this. As you looked at the text amendment slide there, that was, just to be absolutely clear, that was potentially proposed language for the CC3 zone. That wasn't meant to insinuate that we would recommend modifying the current design standards that regulate activities on theater spaces or at the school district site. We believe we believe our sign design standards currently are serving the community well for those 2 locations. So it would be more about a discussion on what to do within the CC3 zone, which Greg, as he mentioned, is quite limited and affects a fairly few number of properties. And we do think, though, beyond that, we may want to contemplate those properties along the 405 corridor with the goal that we not create signs that look like the particular sign that's in Lawndale now that lights up the universe, but with something more in a technological way that serves both the businesses and residents and includes design standards that I think meet our needs rather than spaces needs. So from there, I think we're willing to take any discussion you have, questions, and obviously you're giving us direction on how we would come back with a municipal code modification.
All right, thank you. So I'll just say that, yeah, fully agree with the CC3 updates. That sign you showed up there had 2 businesses right off the bat. I could tell that weren't even there anymore. And when you have proper quality signage and proper quality lights and a municipality that takes care of this, the infrastructure like that, and the private side will reciprocate, and that creates that ongoing movement going forward. The harbor definitely needs it, so definitely 100%. When it comes to the signs in the other areas, 405 Freeway with Del Amo and the PCH, I would agree with to start allowing something somewhere in small doses along PCH, knowing that it's significant amount of residential there, but along the 405, a lot more lenient. And of course, everyone that gets one of these or has one of these goes through a CUP process, which can easily be revoked, because the one problem I don't want to have happen is on PCH and Avenue D, there's a building that was demoed with under the guise that the billboard that is there was supposed to be demoed as well, and they were going to rebuild the building. They never rebuilt the building, and they just left the sign standing there. So those kind of lessons learned we need to have in place. And lighting, for instance, at 10 o'clock at night, on, off, because I don't think that particular billboard is required to be turned off, but they do it because they're being neighborly.
Yeah, and those aren't technically electronic.
Those are with lights, but
they're illuminated, but they're static displays, right?
LED lights can be very bright.
Yeah.
The last thing we need is problems like that of that nature. So, listen, modern day signs provide modern day features. Let's keep up with that. I've gotten a lot of requests in places for electronic signs. So, Councilmember MD.
Thank you for mentioning the lighting on the signs over on the 405 Freeway. Lawndale has one that's just shines all over the North Redondo quite obnoxiously. So we want to make sure we're not that neighbor. And if we do it across the street, to have it be Del Amo and Vaughn's, that we be sensitive to the people who are sleeping in the hotels that are across the 405 Freeway, things along that nature.
Hondo's already got them covered, though. They plenty of light.
All right. So just thank you for mentioning that. And that was really all I was going to say on that. Thanks.
Okay. And since Councilmember Lowenstein is not here, I forgot to ask him. I'm not sure if he would have put his hand up. He does.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. So, yes, I'm also concerned about, first of all, I am in favor of the sign in the harbor. It's fairly limited. I'm a little bit concerned about light pollution. I'm concerned about, these bordering residential neighborhoods. Maybe we need to figure out what the right number of lumens are that these things emit. And I'm a bit hesitant about allowing these on PCH. Less hesitant about the 405, but I don't want us to turn out like Las Vegas, honestly. We have a small beach town, and I'm worried about the character of that being destroyed by lots and lots of these signs. And once you let a lot of a handful of these in, other people saying, well, you let it in for them, why not for us? So again, I'm okay with the harbor. I'm not okay with Artesia right now, and PCH. I'm a bit leery about both of those. And less hesitant about the 405, but I don't want, Ferguson and Del Amo and everything else like all in a row. I just think that's a problem. So I think we have to be very judicious in terms of how much we allow in this. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Baji.
All right. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Nierenheim, bless you, that the signs are really important. I mean, Asa Base said it best. She saw the sign and it opened up her eyes. So it could change the whole feel of the waterfront if you change that sign down there, which is old, and we budgeted in the last the last budget, not this last one, sorry, the first 2021-22 budget, $100,000, I believe. So do we know how much, how far that money is going to go? Are we half funded? Are we fully funded?
We don't, until we determine how big an actual electronic board we want to fund here. It could run the gamut. We were able to, I believe, install the refurbished signage up at the PAC for under $100,000, but that was a rehabilitation of existing structure. So this would be, I think, significantly more than that. But we might be able to gain some partnership. There's other businesses that want to participate with this. So,
and I haven't seen it. Have you seen an example of a single digital sign that's advertising for multiple businesses? Because obviously there's Captain Kids down there, there's the International Boardwalk, there's Samba's, right? And then the Beach Life restaurant or whatever that is.
yeah, that is part of the challenge. I mean, we haven't even gotten there with just the logistical installation, because even if you do a scroll representing each of the businesses, let's say they all get 5 seconds of airtime within any minute, or whatever we decide on the design guideline basis, you could have businesses unrepresented during that particular flow through of traffic. So it may be something that includes branding on the sign that's static, as well as sort of a visual and modified formatting, from a messaging standpoint. So, but we've got to, getting to that level is another step, right? What we've got to first do is say, we're okay with it being in the code and being allowed under the code. Then we've got to come back to you and say, here's the proposed sign. Here's ultimately perhaps the COP recommendations that we would make. And we'd have to go before the Harbor Commission and then ultimately the City Council as part of that consideration.
So on that front, is there any thought of going to the Planning Commission for, have the Planning Commission kick this around a little bit before it comes to us?
They could, and Planning Commission has a role on inland design regulations as it pertains to the city sign and the school district sign.
Maybe send the waterfront sign to the Harbor Commission and the rest of the signage to the Planning Commission.
Right, I think that's what we would suggest. Yeah, in this case, anything that's occurring in the CC3 zone, of course, would be ultimately viewed and regulated by the Harbor Commission in their adjudicative role. And then if we did permit signs along the 405 as an example, that would be something that's subject to Planning Commission review. We could, as we prepare the design standards in general, we could certainly seek input more generically from the commission at both locations. In fact, we could seek it from both commissions theoretically, but certainly from a regulatory standpoint, you'd want to keep that isolated.
And the Planning Commission would have a recommendation on the actual text amendment that we bring back to you, because we would be amending the zoning code so that they have a purview there.
All right, so I'd favor, same thing Councilmember Lowenstein said, no on Artesia, yes on 405. That's going to be limited to on-site advertisement near the 405?
Yeah, that's, I think, how we would envision it. The question about whether or not we would allow one per parcel, to Councilman Lowenstein's point, is something we'd have to think through. We might want to force, maybe it's one on each side of the freeway, and then the businesses that affront or are immediately adjacent to the 405 have the ability to share that signage. So we have, one that serves the Vaughn Shopping Center, Ferguson's, and Del Amo, and then we have one that serves the 3 hotels. We could do it that way, but we can explore that. If you're comfortable with the 405, we can explore those options for you.
Sure, and I would certainly want to be cognizant of the residents around there, and to the extent it would, it would cause light pollution into the residential neighborhood there. We wouldn't want that to occur too much. So that's it, and I would rather that the ordinance come back through the various commissions, the waterfront one through the Harbor Commission, because otherwise they're all going to be here complaining about why we didn't seek their opinion, plus their opinion is valuable to us. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I completely agree with Councilmember Lowenstein. Hard no on the arterials. I'm okay with the sign, but I'm glad you just pointed out the comments about the design guidelines, because I think it's important to reevaluate that. Are you going to have just static portions and maybe some live portions? Do you want them live all the time, all night long? We don't know what's going to happen in that area. So I think, being able to have the flexibility to figure out what that is later on is going to be important in the harbor. And then I again agree with Todd, specific to the 405. We just don't want, sign after sign after sign. So I think what you just said was also important, maybe one on one side, maybe one on the other at the maximum. And then again, just if we allow that there, just be judicious in how that is applied as well.
Sure. And the one point I would also make is, as it stands today, the sign that's on the Redondo Beach Marina, that we call the Redondo Beach Marina property, although it's really not that anymore, would be theoretically city-owned and operated, right? So we would have full control over how we ultimately populate it. We want to do that with the businesses in mind. We want to certainly support their needs, but we have quite a bit of authority there theoretically as to how it's used.
Okay, I'll just say that you guys remember the LED sign at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center is not that bright. It's really just not that bright. And I'm thinking of the 2 or 3 regular billboards that are in District 1 on PCH. Those are lit up with these massive lights, white lights, to really make it explode with lighting. These LED lights are you can get them much more dimmer, not as bright, so they're not like the ones that you're seeing along the desert, these huge billboards. You can really control the amount of light that's coming off the LED lights. So when it comes to the question of light pollution, you could actually you might very well end up getting less light pollution with these LED signage lights or LED electronic lights versus what we currently have, especially along PCH. And also the size and scope. So I'm definitely not saying that we should be allowing these good massive 30 by 40 foot signs or 20 by 40 foot signs, but maybe just smaller signs that are just, 2 or 3 feet in size and width. Because we don't allow any of that signage right now.
Yeah, I would argue, I agree with you. I think modern technology allows us to do almost anything as it pertains to shielding, light pollution, control. You look at the old Performing Arts Theater sign, and it was bright and it was still hard to read. And, now we have something that's much sharper from an imagery standpoint and is actually much more contained in its sort of directionality. The challenge that you bring up, we have the old billboards. There's some legacy rights to those billboards that are a bit problematic for us. And I'm not even sure our code is fully able to adjust their behavior, so to speak. Now, but to your point, there could down the road, and it's something we could explore, we could incentivize them to transition to a modern electronic sign under our new standards that might actually bring them underneath our umbrella, but it might be enough of an encouragement to them because of the flexibility with the sign that they would be willing to make that transition. But there's individual research that would have to be done at each of those locations to know whether or not a conversion would be something that's possible.
And I know certain cities derive decent amount of revenue.
There's some license revenue sometimes.
License revenue from that. And Artesia Boulevard, just remember on Artesia Boulevard for District 4 up there for the South Bay Galleria, the corner that's at the very corner of Artesia and Hawthorne there, that faces outwards towards Lawndale, that faces outwards towards the, it's a very valuable corner, and it faces out towards the Lawndale, that whole corner area. So I'm sure they would be possibly interested in doing an electronic sign there. There's no residential there. So that might be a thought process you want to have in your mind. Other than that, send to the Harbor Commission, get their input, and Planning Commission for the inland areas.
The one thing I would ask, if the council's comfortable with, is allow us to perhaps compartmentalize these two endeavors, and I mean the 405 exploration and the CC3 zoning, because I know we're trying to accomplish a specific goal as it pertains to the Redondo Beach Marina sign. I think we have a pretty clear path on the CC3 concept. The 405 Muni Code adoption and change is going to take a little more exploration and research. So if you'd allow us to decouple those and actually bring them forward on their own course, I think that would help us.
Absolutely.
And might allow some more relief in the waterfront more quickly.
All right, is there anyone in person that would like to speak? Wow, something's wrong.
Quiet crowd.
Summertime, schools are starting again.
There you go. All right, Zoom comments.
I have no Zoom comments and I have no e-comments for this.
Okay. Are there any motions, or do you want me to make a motion? Anyone? Oh, I don't see anything here. Did you hit your thing? Okay.
Oh.
I thought you said somebody had their,
It's not selectable.
I make a motion that we allow one electronic sign within the waterfront CC3 zone, subject to developmental standards and Harbor Commission review, and to consider allowing electronic signs as a separate item along the 405 freeway.
CCH.
And then you're going to allow, allow or consider, bring back PCH, possibly the corner of on Artesian Hawthorne, and
Have that go to the planning commission separately.
and make sure everything goes through planning and harbor as appropriate.
Perfect.
And just as it pertains,
second
as it pertains to PCH quarter, are we talking just allowances in general as we, let us explore that kind of
Yeah.
at our discretion?
Sizes, discretions, maybe have a discussion as well to maybe a way to get rid of the ones that we currently have and replace them with LED.
Okay. We can research that.
So all we're doing is just, staff is researching this, right? We're not changing.
No.
Okay. Okay, because I'm a little bit leery about making a decision on PCH tonight, for sure.
And
Right, and that's the only reason why I allowed that in the motion, Todd, because I heard you on, you didn't want it on PCH, but it's just a consideration.
Yeah, and what I would add to that, Councilman, just to maybe continue to alleviate or assuage concerns, we are very sensitive to the proliferation issue. That's ultimately why we didn't recommend proceeding with that now. As long as you are all comfortable with us decoupling, as I said earlier, and we can move forward with the CC3 on its own path, we'll explore the 405, explore, maybe a limited opportunity on PCH, and perhaps explore the viability of the one corner there to serve the Galleria on Artesia and Hawthorne as an option. But again, that's research. That isn't us coming back with a Muni Code amendment that would immediately allow that in zoning. So we will come back with the text amendment on CC3 though as quickly as we can.
Yeah, just let the planning commission play with it. Yeah. Talk about it. All right, are there any other commenters? Anyone else from the public wants to talk about the motion on the floor? Any Zoom or no? None? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And no opposed, passes unanimously. Okay, onwards to item N2, which is Mr. Saman, discussion and possible action regarding city's living streets policy, BCH Streets for All program-related grant opportunities, and preparation of Living Streets Design Manual. So I got a quick question to start off with. We had a large meeting between all beach cities about 2018-ish, 19 maybe. It was in the springtime, I believe, and we started off here and we met up there in the library. Is this a part of this manual and continuing of that Living Streets Manual that they had for BCHD, and is this completely separate from that we talked about?
I would say we're going to answer that as part of the presentation for you.
Fantastic.
And there is some connectivity absolutely to that. Again, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. I'm Ted Saman, the Public Works Director for the city. Just to clear the air, and because people hear Beach Cities Health District and they think things are associated to their healthy living campus, this has no bearing on that, no connectivity to it. As you mentioned, this is something that goes back a few years from its inception. This is one of the strategic priorities that the City Council has identified, and we're here to present that to you. In addition to myself and Andy, which I'll hand it over to Andy in a minute to do the presentation, we are also joined by Jacqueline Sun from the Beach Cities Health District. She is a Zoom member and will be available for any questions you may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city engineer, Andy Wingy.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem. My presentation tonight is just oral. But first, a few definitions. Complete streets, living streets, streets for all are names that get thrown around a little bit. Complete streets design is actually state mandated to consider every user group or modality, bikes, pedestrians, bikes, motorists, transit users, and it's required to be included in any substantive revision of the circulation element effective January 2011. So that's state law. That's something that we need to do. Living streets is kind of an enhancement on that includes complete street programming, but also considers various nearby land uses, incorporating elements related to social and economic vitality, health, quality of life, and restoration of the urban ecosystem. So it's kind of an enhanced complete streets. Streets for All moniker is kind of the marketing effort or the public-facing language used by the Beach Cities Health District to inform and educate the public about living streets. So just wanted to kind of straighten out definitions of those terms, at least as I'll be using them tonight in the presentation. Living streets can include consideration of sidewalks, bulb outs, bike lanes, and signage, comfortable and accessible transit stops, marked crossings, medians, green street improvements, pedestrian signals, street trees, vegetation, roundabouts, and even destinations. The City Council adopted a resolution in 2013 that established the city's Living Street Guideline and Policy, which established guiding principles and practices to transportation-related projects. Since that time, the city has implemented some large and obvious projects like the Harbor Drive Gateway Project, our bike track, the Esplanade Bike and Pedestrian Improvements Project, Safe Routes to School and School Area Safety Analysis, a Bus Bench and Shelter Improvements Project, the North Redondo Beach Bikeway at Artesia Parcel Enhancements Project, and there are several more in design and construction right now, such as the Barrel Street Improvements, currently from Flagler to Prospect, but actually continuing on to 190th Street to the north and all the way to Catalina to the south and west. Torrance Boulevard under contract right now and ready to construction to start here in a few weeks. Manhattan Beach Boulevard at about 90% design coming soon. The Grant Avenue bike lanes installed, and then the pending signal and pedestrian improvement projects coming up, currently being advertised for bids. We also have the Transit Center and many others. Several grant-funded projects are underway for build-out of the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan, $1.5 million grant for construction of a number of elements of that, an extension of the North Redondo Beach Bikeway, another $1 million grant, design of a connection of that bikeway to the Ripley Grant Redondo Beach Boulevard corridor. That's a $200,000 grant for design. And we're seeking another $1.5 million to fund purchase of additional right-of-way to support that connection. We have another $6.6 million grant partnered with the City of Lawndale and LA County as partners to create an active transportation corridor improvements that will run from Dominguez Park all the way to El Camino College. So we have a number of things in play that bring about these living streets enhancements. There's also scores of smaller projects that include living streets principles and elements, but often go unrecognized because it's just a routine part of our project scope these days. Items like bulb outs, other pedestrian crossing enhancements in places like the Riviera Village, Maria at Anita, Broadway and Torrance Boulevard, the city's green street tree installation program, which targets now 200 street trees per year installed, dozens of green street elements added to our residential rehab program or other arterial pavement improvement programs. It's fair to say that living streets is really in the DNA of our CAP program, wherever transportation projects exist. We've become, at a staff level, is so used to it, it doesn't seem to be cutting edge policy anymore as much as routine, common sense decision-making. That said, we do have some unfinished business on the administrative end. BCHD has prepared this Beach Cities Oriented Living Streets Design Manual, which was mentioned, with the help and cooperation of the staff from Redondo, Manhattan, and Hermosa. And Mayor Pro Tem, to answer your question, I do believe there was a presentation on this publicly. I don't know exactly the one you're referring to. Jacqueline might be able to help me here on this, but yeah, it has been presented at some level before with all the cities in, I think it's 2018. That design manual kind of got stalled by COVID and other things a couple of years ago. We would like to dust that off and escalate that back up to your attention at the appropriate time. I need to get familiar with it. Frankly, my traffic engineers in the past have worked on that. I've not been involved, so I'd like to get involved in that, as well as if we're able to fill the vacant position, get that person involved with it, but certainly bring it forward at an appropriate rate and bring it back to the council at the appropriate time. So that's one of our recommendations tonight. In terms of grants, we are continually keeping our ear to the ground for grant opportunities. For instance, we just became aware that the program that turned us on to the corridor along Redondo Beach Boulevard has now turned their attention to 190th Street as a priority corridor. So we'll be applying for project grants along that corridor to help complete active transportation improvements there. Somebody mentioned earlier tonight the $75,000 for a grant advisor or consultant to help us identify those grants. Certainly we'll put that on their list, their watch list of things to keep aware of as we move forward. Certainly grateful for that funding. So really tonight, we just wanted to bring you up to speed on the Living Streets history through the staff report, and then what we're doing now, the projects that we're involved. This, as I mentioned, we really feel like this is common practice for us anymore in terms of our design and construction practices, the kind of solutions that we bring to you for consideration at particular crossings or traffic calming type elements. And so we're happy and excited to hear ideas about expansion, how to enhance this, how to increase this, but certainly would like to take this design manual forward to bring back to you for consideration of adoption at some point in the future. It's really all I had to share with regard to a presentation. As Ted mentioned, Jacqueline's available to talk about more particulars of their program and perhaps the design manual itself.
The only real comment or question I've got, I don't see any other comments up here, is this Living Streets manual does not include plans, which are hopefully dead, for adding
Diets?
yes, road diets.
No.
They have dieted
We
themselves out
understand the
of.
sensitivity of that. It's trying to provide for all, not necessarily to shift their responsibilities from one mode of transportation to the other.
Perfect. Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
One thing I'd love to see in our Living Streets design manual, or, I don't know if this is part of like the bike plan or what, but how we get from North Redondo to the beach in the best manner. And that's something I've kind of pushed on since I first got on council, but we still, I was hoping that we'd get some basic signage that says this way to the beach, more to see this way, whatever it is, to get down there. But obviously, a living street is one that would allow us to live our lives, not using a vehicle, I think, a motorized car. So I just hope that we kind of prioritize that in our Living Streets manual, is how do North Redondoans who don't live on the coast get to the coast?
Yeah, and I would add to that, it's a good thought, and I know that's an item, a budget item actually, that you've suggested and we've tried to act on in the past, and something we're still working towards. The goal for us, I think, is to ultimately build out that connected route that we feel comfortable with and want to suggest that people take. And I think that's going to be through project execution. The one thing about the Living Streets policy that I want to make sure everybody understands is we're not waiting on the manual to be prepared before we're acting and using these principles to guide what we do. The Living Streets policy is directed and guided all of our project planning for the last several years. And as Andy mentioned, we've had a lot of success, and we will continue to have success. So that particular effort, we don't want that to trail this project. We want to make sure that we're working towards that sort of as we design our built environment. And I think with some of the more recent projects that we're waiting on, did you mention the E76 delay for our bicycle implementation grant that we have in the community? I think we're going to see some additional connectivity that will help achieve that goal.
And I guess one more point is, when we talk about potentially acquiring, as we've seen on our agenda, potentially acquiring parcels like at Grant and Grand Inglewood, the southeast corner, if we could get some basic drawing of what that intersection would look like, just so people can see, like, okay, this is a multi-year long process as far as Public Works being able to actually get the money, act on it, acquire that parcel, and then build out a bike path that gets people to the Galleria. But it is something that folks have heard about for a long time, that eventually there would be a bike path to the Galleria. So if we get some rendering that just shows what that would look like with the acquisition of that property or without, that would be helpful, and kind of, not building up hope, but basically letting people know that progress is being made towards
Correct.
these goals and bringing them livable streets.
Yeah, we'll bring a concept to that end as soon as we can and when appropriate. I don't, Ted, did you mention that we've got a path towards funding perhaps for the acquisition of that property?
Yeah, we have received support from the South Bay City's Council of Government for that, and it will be on the Metro Board agenda in September. As soon as we get that amendment and get confirmation that the Metro Board has approved it, that includes a component of funding for design and including conceptual design, which then we will engage the council to get further direction as well.
And just to be real clear as to what that means, that's the funding that we've been talking about in terms of acquiring that property that we'd hoped to pay for using grant. To Ted and Andy's credits, they're quite modest with these acquisitions, but it's another example of us procuring seven-figure sums of money to improve our built environment. And this, if the board approves what is being recommended by COG in September, we will have found a way to pay for that acquisition without using general fund proceeds. So I don't want to get too excited until they give it the old, formal okay, but it's good news.
Absolutely. And I commend you guys for that to the extent you've gotten the COG support on it. So good luck with that. I hope you get it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have Councilman Lowenstein.
Perfect. Councilmember Lowenstein, thank you.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I just spent 3 weeks in Barcelona, Paris, and Amsterdam. Was amazed at how many protected bike paths there were in the city of Barcelona. They have a great bicycle sharing program, but especially in Amsterdam. Everything is connected there. They have miles and miles and miles of connected bike paths. 25% of all trips are done by bicycle in Amsterdam in all kinds of weather. They don't even have the benefit of the weather that we have. So I really do hope, that we move forward even faster on our bicycle master plan. I encourage anybody to read about what the Dutch have done with their bicycling, their love of bicycles, and they're all healthy. A lot of people are riding bikes there. It's really impressive. And it's not just in the city, it's outside the city. I went on a ride, I think a 30-kilometer ride all around the countryside. It's amazing how many places you can get via bike. So I think this is great that you guys are doing this, and I applaud your efforts. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I want to echo Councilmember Lowenstein's comments and reiterate things I've said here many times before. And he's absolutely right. It's interesting if you've spent any time in Europe. I lived in Copenhagen for a summer. The ability to get around using bikes in cities that have existed longer than this country is far easier. And granted, they probably don't have the same rules and limitations that we put upon ourselves here. But the fact that we live in a beach environment and it has been so challenging to do this, I would say as we kickstart this process again, right, this Living Streets process, I would encourage both staff to the point of a comment made earlier by someone that we really bring the public along on this, because I think a lot of times if people don't understand enough about ideas we are proposing and why, they will automatically defer to, I don't want to see my car go away, don't take my lanes away, right? It's the same thing we hear when we talk about road diets or anything like that. At the same time, I would, encourage my colleagues that the only way we see these changes is by really having the political will to make those changes. And it's not just here in Redondo, it needs to be in our sister cities as well. But I know we can do it. And the simple fact of the matter is that if part of it, let's just use by example, if part of our Living Streets guidelines that we set up is that we are going to commit to Class 4 protected lanes on arterials or collectors where there is enough room to allow it, then we know right away that we're going to rethink the master bicycle plan. So one of the conversations we've had here many times is that why isn't the master bicycle plan implemented after 11 years, right? And as we've had internal talks, some of those streets that were selected were maybe not ideal streets, right, in the first place. And so they create problems, and then people start to go, well, why isn't it happening? And then we have to explain from an engineering perspective why that is. But I think we can reevaluate what can work and what can't work. I think with the local travel network that's going to be coming here as a presentation from the COG, it's another way to look at residential streets for slow speed vehicles, whether those be bikes, scooters, NEVs. We need a bit of a holistic approach as we take on, reevaluating the living streets possibilities, and then, kind of more of a 30,000-foot view as to how does that improve mobility here in the entire South Bay, or at least the beach cities for that matter. And then finally, I would just say, I guess as part of the Living Streets, Complete Streets process, as we kind of kick this up and going, is that we really commit to, especially on Artesia Aviation. So we have that whole SCAG plan that we did in 2018, the Tri-City thing that was addressed here. And some of that does require the shrinking of lanes, and putting in bike lanes and whatnot. But really just embracing that, especially for Artesia from a pedestrian and bicycle perspective, and I'm just specifically singling out Artesia, but we truly have the possibility to build it, and if we build it, I really believe they will come. And the one thing that I have repeated here often is that during the pandemic, now granted there weren't as many cars on the road when everything seemed to shut down, but it was extremely exciting and pleasant to see so many families out walking and biking, as families. There was just people everywhere on bikes or walking because they really weren't as afraid of cars because there just weren't any, right? And I truly believe that if we create the infrastructure for them, and we really rethink about where does our city want to go in the coming 20 to 30 years, that people will use it, and it'll be beneficial for everyone all around. So I won't be here to be a part of that, but I think those are just some thoughts to think about as we're kicking this around, and I'd be happy to participate in any of those conversations and doing community meetings about it and whatnot. Depending on how you guys want to start entering into this next phase. The final thought, I just want to welcome Jacqueline because we haven't seen her in a while. Congratulate her on her new addition to her family. The other part of this title is about the Streets for All program, which we created back in 2016. And we created that program in conjunction with the police department, the school district, the health district, and the city. And I really think anything we do, going back to a comment I made earlier, we have to educate the public. I remember having this conversation with Councilmember Lowenstein years ago. All our traffic issues are part of a three-legged stool, right? It's the infrastructure portion, the enforcement portion, and then the educational component. And, when we hear about an accident like the one, the other day, I think we still have more work to do in making sure that we work together as a police department with the school district and the biking groups to just educate both students and residents who are driving vehicles on just the cautions, as Mayor Brand would say sometimes, about slowing down, being aware of what you're doing, and really just making sure that anything we do within the Living Streets and implementing the Living Streets has a strong educational component that's collaborative with the other organizations within the city. That's it.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Horvath. Councilmember Emdy.
I would just encourage all of you to look at the blue folder item by Dr. Grace Pang. She combined two topics, the light travel network, which is still going to come next month. So I like her. I also thought that LTN was going to come tonight with this whole thing because it kind of gets all tied together. And more than ever, there are much more light travel vehicles out there, and we really need to kind of incorporate that when we're planning our CIP projects as well. And also, it's a discussion about what a Streets for All means. I mean, you're here in the public. Is it really clear what Streets for All means versus, complete streets and all that? because they're, they're not, right? So even though we're having a long discussion about it, it's not clear to what those definitions mean, because they're not the same thing at all. There's overlap, right? I mean, but they're not the same things.
Yeah, there is a lot of overlap between all three of those conversations, right? The living streets is, I guess, the most modern term for how we want to view use of public right-of-way, right? We want a street to not just be a place where we get a car from point A to point B. We want the street and the right-of-way space, the city-controlled or municipally controlled right-of-way space, to be used by pedestrians, and not just to be used by them, but to attract pedestrians, to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel secure, to give them buffering and space between vehicle movement, and to provide attractive landscaping that provides them shade and a visual beauty, right? You want that street to include an opportunity for bikes and other modes of transportation. Maybe to take it even further, it's light rail, it's other transit uses, et cetera, right? Living streets is about creating a place that is more pedestrian, more bicycle friendly, that ultimately generates increased economic value to the neighborhood and the adjacent properties that benefit from that street. Complete streets is an early iteration of that. It's a more of an engineering term. It's us saying we want the street to have a sidewalk, a landscape area, a stormwater remediation component, a bike lane, and a vehicle lane, right? In a very sort of engineering type way, right? A kind of a blueprint for how we want to build a modern street. Living street is an adaptation of complete streets, just sort of taking it up a notch, thinking about more of the aesthetics, thinking about how it's accretive to commercial value, et cetera. And then Streets for All is just a campaign. It's just an education campaign to say, hey, we want everybody in the community to recognize that streets aren't just for cars. They're for people, they're for bikes, they're for other modes of transportation. We shouldn't just be viewing them as that point A to point B car trip, right? That's all Streets for All is. It's more of a campaign. And I don't know, Ted or Andy, if you want to add to that. The three do relate. They overlap in a great deal of areas, but they all have their own kind of twist.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add one thing, that we weren't early on, we were looking at the channel of the roadway, right? That's the section that we want to utilize for all. At this particular point, we're not only describing all the things that Mike described, but the connectivity to the adjacent properties. In the past, these used to be sort of segregated. Well, we want that connectivity. We want that connectivity for the bikes, for the peds, as well as for those automobiles. Yeah.
So Dr. Pang's letter, there's other challenges as well. For example, to have a comfortable sidewalk, she was showing pictures of having a street pole in the middle of a sidewalk. It's very hard to get anyone to go around to be able to walk when there's a street pole right there. Or it's very hard to have two people walking side by side on a sidewalk when those kind of challenges happen.
You can't. You don't physically have space.
It's not comfortable at all.
No.
So those are the kind of things that need to be evaluated every time you go through a CIP project. And one of the more exciting things is on the landscaping. It isn't just a matter of putting a tree in. It's a matter of making a gullies so that the water collects, and so it brings it down so that it kind of feeds into the water table and keeps water local instead of having it rushing down the street into the ocean. There's certain things like that are all involved in this whole campaign. Yeah. And that's kind of going to be kind of key to be able to educate people on what all those mean, because the first thing they hear when they hear any of this is road diet. That's it. I'm not. And that's not what this is all about.
No, and I would say it's only 2 to 5% of our explorations even contemplate some type of a narrowing of lanes or a repurposing of lanes. And you've heard me talk about that here before. We have long focused on what I consider to be low-hanging fruit as it pertains to implementing Living Streets principles in our community, and we've done a really good job about it. And I think a lot of our projects really have adapted a lot of these elements. The challenge for us almost every time is space. We are trying to serve all these different goals in a very constrained environment. And you mentioned our utility poles. That is the bane of our existence, particularly in our northern Redondo communities and neighborhoods. We have front of house, Edison infrastructure, right? And that is a very difficult thing to work around, minus undergrounding in a very expensive way, all of that utility. And I think at some point, it's one of those things that's very much a component of living streets. It's when you plan streets is to get rid of visual blight, particularly from utility. You want that apparatus underground. But it's very difficult to put it underground.
Well, it doesn't have
after
to
the
be
fact.
underground. It could be a bulb out for that, but it still requires moving. I mean, there's other solutions to that.
There can be.
And so.
There can be when you have enough space, right? It all takes some level of space, right? It seems like you can put a bulb out in, but if that's now encroaching to a parking lane or encroaching into a vehicle lane, you don't necessarily have the space to do it. And there are a lot of neighborhoods, unfortunately, particularly, Councilman Horvath knows this, District 3 in particular, certainly Councilman Obaji's district, District 4, we struggle with this. We've got poles that are in the only place they can really go. And that's right in the middle of the darn sidewalk, right? And that's just where we're at with right-of-way. And that's why always for us, when we can acquire right-of-way, we try to acquire it because we need it to build these streets in a complete and living streets
And to
way.
upgrade our neighborhoods. And so.
Absolutely.
If you could, staff and council, if you guys could take a look at a very thorough discussion of Dr. Grace Pang. So when we bring back LTN, we have some of the answers for her and maybe address some of the suggestions that she made in that letter. That'd be really great.
Absolutely.
I appreciate
I
that
think
because I'm
that's
sure there's challenges in there that she maybe didn't consider. You guys are the experts, and so.
She does have a lot of ideas that we are already including in future projects. So yeah, we're on the same line of thought there. So,
Great,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we share my screen here real quick?
Are you at Dias 1?
1A.
A?
1A, yeah.
Oops. There we go.
So this is what Councilmember MD was just talking about, and I saw this myself, and I chuckled to myself about how this is like, in many ways, government.
Right.
Right? Just standing in the way. And so these problems of yesteryear, as we go through this, are not going to be fixed anytime soon, and they are really representative of hard decisions that were made, but we don't necessarily own, like our city manager just said, we didn't own the right of way necessarily, but it has to go there. So how do you design around those constraints, right? And when I saw this photo, I couldn't think of a better example of how hard it is to do what we're doing up here and how we're now trying to fix a lot of these problems along the way. Because they were just 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, even 10 years ago, they were just,
That's 50 probably.
50 years ago, they were like, 50 years ago, okay, fine, it is what it is. And then 20 years ago or 10 years ago, it's like, well, okay, maybe we can do something. But now we're actually sitting here looking at this, how do we fix this?
Right.
So it's that's what I wanted to say on that. And, to Ted and Andy, I'm reading in here, $277,000 in a grant. I'm sure the Beach City's Living Design Streets Manual, that was a grant, probably from the South Bay COG, right? The South Bay COG is powered off grants. $6 million reward, $6.6 million from Metro for Lawndale County that we're working on right now. A lot of our streets that we get paved and done are done through grants. One thing I've learned by being up here is most of our public works is funded through grants, street improvements, streetscaping. It's a tremendous, when people come here and start talking about grants, there's a phenomenal amount of opportunity. So, thank you guys for writing these grants, winning these grants and moving forward. And I think this manual here shows that we got a long way to go. There's a lot of opportunities here to change our city. And I know Councilmember Lowenstein and I always talk about it, painting the streets for bike paths, green, different colors, because it helps create that safety area, that movement forward. And I know when I go to other cities, that's a big value for them. So thank you for that. And we don't do a lot of check presentations down here at the city council, and they're done for certain reasons, but we get grants all the time. Like I said in here a few minutes ago, grants are a big deal about how we do public works. If we get in grants, check presentations, we do it all the time.
All the time. It's millions of dollars a year that our staff is successful in acquiring each fiscal year as part of our capital plan. It's a lot of work.
All right, any members of the public wanting to speak in person, in Zoom, or e-comment?
Yeah, Jacqueline Sun would like to speak.
Okay.
So.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council and staff. Really appreciate you prioritizing this on your strategic plan. Really appreciate you and the staff for continuing to champion these principles. I think to add on to a lot of the great stuff that's been said, a lot of the Living Streets work that the Health District has done started in 2010 with the Blue Zones Project. And obviously that was done to promote this walkability and bikeability and this connectivity that we're talking about from a health perspective. But as Mike mentioned, this is so much more than that in terms of the benefits of environmental stewardship and the economic benefits and the placemaking benefits. And I think that, this work over time has taken the form of, in many forms and many iterations, including our Streets for All campaign, and really appreciate the city in continuing to, champion these things with our Living Streets policy, the implementation, all the things that Andy was mentioning as part of your normal operations. I think it's a true marker of success. And I think that the adoption and consideration of the design manual helps to codify that. So just for some additional context to provide this, what Mayor Pro Tem Manheim was mentioning, the $277,000 came from SCAG, and that was applied, the 3 cities applied jointly for that funding in partnership with the Health District to kind of help with the coordination. And so we, with that money, done some of the preliminary design work on bike lanes on aviation, as Councilmember Horvath mentioned, but also as part of that grant, we hired Stantec to create this Living Streets design manual. So Mayor Pro Tem Narenheim, you're correct in that 2018, we did that study session, and that's when Stantec and Rock Miller kind of presented this design manual. And it really is a technical design manual with some guidance to help your planners and engineers really look at the best practices. I mean, if you look at the chapters in there, it's crossings, intersection design, street calming treatments, bikeways, placemaking, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about already. And so we look forward to continuing this conversation with staff and working with you and the staff to continue championing this. I think Councilmember Horvath, your comments about the education is and remains really important with all kind of street safety education, but bike safety specifically, and I think e-bike safety specifically right now. We're continuing to work with our partners with the Bike Coalition and amplifying the existing messages that are out there through the school districts and the police departments, and getting some more content out in the schools and disseminating them in time for back to school and our walk and roll to school day, which is on October 12th. So appreciate all this and looking forward to working more closely with the staff on this.
Okay, I have none.
All right, anyone else from members of the public? Dan, Councilmember Obaji, is your...
Yes, Mayor, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. One thing I've heard from residents, I've heard both favor for putting a bike lane down Artesia and opposition to it, is you've got one-way residential streets on either side. If you want to bike down if you want to bike east and west, then get on one of those streets. I totally understand that because those are very safe biking streets. With that said, there's no great thing you can do once you hit Aviation on one of those streets, be it Vanderbilt or Matthews. So I get, I'd be interested to hear, what options we have to make it so that biking east and west could occur on a street other than Artesia Boulevard, so we don't look at eliminating all that parking. But And I guess I'll make a referral during
a motion
another
and a
session of
referral.
this later.
Motion and referral. That would be great.
The motion.
Motion to receive and file.
Yeah, motion to receive and file this. Thank you, Public Works.
Before you make the motion, I just jotted a couple of notes, and Andy and I thank you for all your input. We've identified Amsterdam, Paris, and Barcelona as places that we need to do further research.
I think we do a site visit.
That's a great idea. I like it.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna open up the meeting here, then we'll get on the airplane and fly over there, continue on. Everyone's welcome. Take staff with us and come back, and we'll adjourn back here X amount of time for later.
I'll second that motion, by the way.
I took pictures, so you don't, I took pictures so you don't have to travel there.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
what?
Yeah. Todd hit all of those spots here, so he did our recon.
I
God,
understand.
he's such a party pooper.
No. Okay, so we have a motion maker with receive and file with what again?
That's on its own.
Well, and what I would suggest, as opposed to the referral, feel free to give us that kind of general direction for review. If you want us to look at that, we can. I think it's a reasonable thought. It's probably something we will consider as part of our ACAP evaluation analysis anyway, because, we are, again, even on RTs, you're going to be competing for right-of-way uses. We've got a lot of desired uses, whether it be heavy vehicle trips, parking needs, bicycle needs, comfortable pedestrian needs. So it may very well make sense to look at the adjacent streets.
I will tell you that if one does want to bike down Artesia, what they end up doing is getting on the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk, their bike takes up the whole sidewalk. So you cannot pass somebody without asking them, hey, can you scoot over? And you've got to travel at low speeds, which I'd be concerned. How do we we leave that up to everybody else? They might not be going at such a low speed. We might have people getting hit coming out of stores if it becomes a real vibrant place, like we hope it does under the ACAP. So, all right, that's it. Receive and file motion.
Second. All right, Kansas City Attorney hasn't flown out here when you said people riding their bicycles on the sidewalks is legal in the city of Redondo Beach.
It is legal?
It is illegal.
Illegal,
but it's
yeah,
not
You can't.
But it's not well posted.
It's not posted, so therefore there's no enforcement. But it does ask me electronic bikes. Started to get a lot of discussions on that for many various reasons, and especially the last few months. And there's obviously a reason. Should we be discussing that during the strategic plan?
I think so. I think e-bikes is its own consideration.
agenda.
There's regulatory issues. There's opportunity. It's where should they be traveling? Certain e-bikes really shouldn't be in a bike lane at all. They might want to be in the street depending on their speed. So there's a lot to the e-bike conversation, much more so than just let's make sure we incorporate a provision on it in the Living Streets Design Manual, because I think it's something we'll consider naturally as part of the drafting, but I think we'll have some discussions at strategic plan.
All right, thank you. So,
And the going down the side streets, great idea. The problem is that Matthews has a 16% grade versus Artesia Boulevard's pretty flat. So I mean, you're gonna have challenges on both ways on that. So it's gonna be a problem.
Always.
Yeah, so when you come back with those discussions, those are certain things to be discovering. And with parking on both sides, like Grace Payne wrote in her letter, that forces the bike to be in the middle of the road with the cars that are traveling. So anyway, you're gonna have challenges. I'll be looking forward to the conversation.
sounds like a great way to get in shape. All right, motion on the floor, no more public comment unless someone was one last taker. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, onward, next to, I believe, city manager items?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, Mayor Pro Tem, strategic plan sessions coming up August 30th and September 1st. We'll have those agendized. They'll probably be published as 6 to 9 kind of meeting duration, but it will go until we're ready to kind of logically move on each of the evenings. I'm hopeful that we'll be a little bit more expedient this year, having gone through around, now roughly 7 months ago. So I think we'll be quick about it. And you approved the contract with Eric Douglas tonight as our facilitator, who I thought did a great job last time. He'll be here with us in a sort of hybrid format. He'll Zoom in with us on Tuesday, and then he'll be here at the podium on Thursday to help us work through final objectives. And we continue to work through staffing transitions. I'm pleased to announce, although I can't offer you the details, that we have extended a conditional offer to a new library services director. He has accepted that offer. He's in the pre-employment process, and hopefully we'll have an announcement on the completion of that process here in the next couple of weeks with a start in September. So we are moving forward on new faces in the organization, and pleased to bring them on. So
I have a question on, I was at the Riviera bid board meeting this morning, and there was we put aside $10,000 for public art in the village on the ground for painting.
yeah, I think I got to look at how we phrase that, but yes, there's some cooperative opportunity there, yeah.
So I just wanted to get whoever needed to be inputted on that regarding public works.
Yeah.
I would have assumed, because they're going to be moving forward with projects on that sooner than later. They're very much amplified.
Yeah, we'll need to make sure. I think we've got to get, we'll probably participate in their next meeting and have Public Works representatives attend that to consider those project concepts.
Okay. And the Avenue C ramp, that's county, but the Avenue A ramp we dealt with last week. And Nob Hill ramp, what's the update status on the Nob Hill pathway for?
The Beach Bluff?
The Beach Bluff.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a delay with the contractor receiving materials. I think they've started staging. They were hopeful to be under full construction, but I think they did receive some supply chain issues. So I'll try to get you all an update on that here in the next week.
So one thing I want you to be cognizant of, I know you know this already, but the farmer's market, that's there. And then speaking of construction, being cognizant on the amount of parking that Alta Vista is being taken up by with a sewer project. I've gotten lots of inquiries, complaints about issues, questions about that as well. So
as the county came in to consider an appropriate staging location, we worked through the farmer's market issue as a big talking point. I think we resolved that. We put them into a corner that I think works for both purposes. But if there's continued consternation, we can always make adjustments to that as the project progresses.
Okay. Any questions on items there? If let's see, onwards to item number P1, which is discussion considers mayor's appointments to various boards and commissions.
We're deferring that. I think we're going to defer that to the September 6th meeting.
Unfortunately, had that part of the motion. I realized that about a minute after we passed the motion. So
I would just take if the council's comfortable, defer the item to the 6th.
Motion to table into first meeting in September, or
September 6th, I believe.
September 6th. Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any referrals to staff? Actionable items? Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
No, thank you.
Councilmember MD.
What's that about? Did I just hear that you finally hired a traffic engineer?
No. Library Services Director.
No. I heard it from Ted earlier. Are they not hiring that? No.
No, unfortunately, our batch of candidates we weren't comfortable with, so that is going to be reopened. And I actually may come back to you all with an item of consideration for modifying our structure there for that position. We weren't thrilled with the candidate pool.
Okay, well, I'm going to, I'd like to put something on this person's to-do list before they get hired. And so.
Andy's list?
Yeah, Andy's list. And so honestly, I asked for this 7 years ago and I was told no. And then I asked it again and I was told no, but it
We have a traffic engineer then and we don't have one now.
But now we have a different traffic engineer coming in. And so I'm going to try one more time because this keeps coming up over and over and over again. The left turn lane from southbound Inglewood to eastbound Artesia, that turn lane is just 2 to 3 cars too short. And then, and it gets brought up at least once every other month by residents. And then the last person who brought it up to me was my grandson when we were in that left turn lane, in which he said, this turn light is just always 2 to 3 cars too short.
Well, we've all suffered
So
through
can
that, I
you look
think,
through that?
before.
No, but it's just that particular turn lane is what I get asked all the
It says
time.
he'll have it fixed tomorrow.
Well, good. All right then, thanks.
We'll look at it.
Okay, no one, oh, did I forget someone?
So the good thing about going to these ICA meetings, you come back full of ideas. But I will say that I'm very satisfied with the speeds I'm seeing on Artesia Boulevard and Grant Avenue. And I feel like we have positive momentum where North Redondo residents are like recognizing there's a quality of life issue associated with driving slow in our neighborhood. And I wonder if it would be a very inexpensive thing for us to launch a drive slow in Redondo campaign. Like where we put up the banners about, over Artesia Boulevard or over Inglewood, something to that effect. And on our, on our digital site.
Some electronic
slides and the
signage?
like. Yeah, electronic signage that already exists. That's just like drive slow in Redondo. And it kind of is catchy, it's easy, make some social media on it.
Drive slow, it saves gas.
Yeah, but that, that goes.
This sounds like a pretty good strategic plan item to maybe kick around in a couple weeks. I mean, yeah.
And the second thing I did want to send a referral on was maybe to get a discussion on undergrounding, particularly in North Redondo. I realize it's monumentally expensive and so on and so forth, but at some point the analysis has to be done and the cost has to be understood by the residents and the electeds, so we can make a decision not to go forward or to start saving up for that investment.
We can do that. Also, I think another one to bring up is strategic plan. It's a perfect one to put on as one of our objectives.
Okay.
We can talk
Sounds
and
good.
frame it a
Yes,
little bit.
I'll note that to myself. Thank you.
Now I know what rep you were talking to from SCE. They love those conversations.
She did not have any answers for me, but she said, I can take you to lunch with the person who knows.
Okay, that brings us to.
I have a community meeting on that time.
Recessing. Actually, we are done. So.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.